Chapter 3:12. After killing the previous controller in one fell swoop, the Devil Ray took the opportunity to sink. Its huge flat body was almost touching the surface of the water, but it did not enter the water. It only flapped its strong pectoral fins. The pectoral fins were not wings after all, and the frequency of their undulation was very slow. However, when the airflow passed through the cross-sections that looked like waves, it was affected by an amazing force and gathered layer by layer. The density of the airflow increased and became one of the sources of power, allowing the gigantic body that weighed several tons to be lifted in the air calmly. The 15-meter-wide behemoth floated above the viewing platform. It was not only spectacular, but it was also terrifying. The pool below was affected by the compressed air, and waves surged up the shore layer by layer. Tian-Si, who had just fallen into the water, was also lifted up by the surging waves. She lay on the edge of the pool in a daze. On the other hand, Puppeteer, who was completely dead, was completely submerged in the ripples of water, vanishing without a trace. You can already control mutants, yet you're doing such meticulous work? Due to the impact of Puppeteer's death, at least half of Snake Tongue's attention was currently focused on the heavenly ocean lake. Actually, she could still accept the Devil Ray's betrayal. Puppeteer, this half-baked Puppeteer, deserved to die this way. It was just a matter of time. On the other hand, mutants with strengthened bodies were not much of a threat to her. What truly concerned Snake Tongue was Luo Nan's method of controlling the Devil Ray. Based on the Devil Ray's performance, it was able to clearly distinguish between a person who had fallen into the water. It had sent Tian-Si to the shore and let Puppeteer's corpse sink to the bottom. The rarest thing was to follow one's natural instincts and make use of the impact of the waves. This was the consideration of the Devil Ray, not the thinking of humans. This proved one point. Luo Nan's control over the Devil Ray was to subdue it, not to manipulate it. This was an extremely high-level technique even among the Puppeteers. Puppeteer had used professional techniques to bypass it, but what did Luo Nan rely on? Luo Nan must have seen Puppeteer reveal the Devil Ray. Luo Nan only acted on the spur of the moment. During this entire process, neither Puppeteer nor Snake Tongue herself noticed anything at all. Even when the Devil Ray betrayed them, Snake Tongue still couldn't confirm what was going on. This method was not mentioned in the intelligence. Of course, Luo Nan intimidated Puppeteer with his long-range bombardment, causing Puppeteer to lose his life. The impact on Snake Tongue was even more direct. It was clear that Luo Nan wasn't restricted by her at all. What in the world was going on with her entanglement on the mental plane? This guy is like a treasury. No, an armory. Snake Tongue was completely unable to predict what this seemingly inexperienced and stubborn half-grown child would pull out in the next moment. Could formatting theory and coupling theory be a spiritual weapon production line? Due to the impact of Puppeteer's immediate death, Snake Tongue's considerations had clearly increased, to the point where she forgot for a moment that now wasn't a good time to mull over such matters. With a slight jolt, he locked onto the location of his soul body. Snake Tongue's heart sank a bit. She saw Luo Nan turn his head at the edge of the viewing platform. The lightning in his eye sockets tore apart the bloodstains and pierced through the air. It was the move he had used to deal with Puppeteer. Snake Tongue had exposed the location of her soul body for the sake of better entanglement with Luo Nan on the mental plane. She looked at Luo Nan from a distance, separated by the remains of Black Beetle's body. At the time, she was certain that Luo Nan could only struggle in the mud of soul strength. Long-range attacks would be hard to realize. She had nothing to fear. But Puppeteer used his life to remind her. His judgment was completely wrong. Snake Tongue knew that it was too late to dodge, so she relied on the fortifications to resist. Unfortunately, the tyrannical attack that he had predicted did not come. There was only a wisp of gentle wind and a beam of faint light. It was slightly warm, but it was the wind brushing against the sunlight. It was very penetrating. What's wrong? Snake Tongue had a bad feeling. On the mental plane, the creeping grass leaves and thick vines trembled noiselessly. They crisscrossed layer by layer, forming a special structure that covered the majority of the viewing platform. The complex surface structure often caused people to overlook the roots of the vines. In reality, every thick vine had a parasitic soil. Earlier, when Luo Nan had cleared the area, he had knocked down several dozen tourists. These people had been used as trash by Snake Tongue. She had planted the Nightmare Vine spell on them, interweaving their energy, blood, and soul power into a net, becoming the foundation of her fortifications. This move was similar to Puppeteer's fuse, but it was more exquisite. Not only could it divert the mental attack, it could also forcefully stimulate everyone's potential, causing the nightmare vine to grow wildly. It became a resource for Snake Tongue to control. It was suitable for both offense and defense. But right now, Luo Nan's mental attack did not come. There was just a gentle breeze blowing and a glimmer of light shining through the gaps in the structure of the nightmare vine spell. It was all-pervasive, making Snake Tongue feel that water had already seeped through the layers of fortification she had constructed. An ominous cloud covered Snake Tongue's mind for the first time. Luo Nan's choice made Snake Tongue even more fearful than his methods. He was a young man. An eye for an eye. After killing a powerful enemy with a backhand, he had come with the momentum of a great victory. He should have carried on the experience of his victory and made persistent efforts in order to achieve victory a second time. But Luo Nan did not. All the intelligence indicated that this child lacked actual combat experience. But he had performed an inconceivable transformation between hard and soft. He had used the most correct and intelligent method to see through the trap of the fortifications. It was very hard to explain this with experience or intuition. It was as certain and natural as copying a standard answer. Snake Tongue knew that if this continued, her foundation would be stripped clean. And that would undoubtedly be the time for Luo Nan's mental attack to completely tear apart her defenses. What to do? 100 thoughts flowed through Snake Tongue's mind, but they were all meaningless. This was because she could no longer see through Luo Nan. Beep! Beep! A ringing sound came from Luo Nan's wristband. This was a warning sent by the control center after the fire protection system of gear was cut off. The destruction of the tank continued. It was only a matter of time before the fire started. Luo Nan's face was as gloomy as water. Snake Tongue could feel the irritation within the soul strength that was projected over. A cold killing intent seeped out from the glimmering breeze. It was unreserved. However, Luo Nan's penetrative force was not affected. He just shifted his gaze to the sky above the heavenly ocean lake, pointing straight at the devil ray floating above the water. The sound of water surged, and the devil ray's height increased. Its pectoral fins flapped slightly, and it flew away from the sky above the heavenly ocean lake. It pressed down to the edge of the viewing platform. Luo Nan, Shui Lei, and even the remains of Black Beetle and Snake Tongue's soul body were all placed under the shadow of its flat body. Before Snake Tongue could react to what was going on, the devil ray's pectoral fins lashed out. The remains of Black Beetle in front of her were like a smashed basketball. His entire body deflated, and he was flung over 30 meters away. He only stopped when he smashed into a decorative statue on the platform. The pure power of the attack did not break the balance. Instead, it simply crushed him. Plus, Snake Tongue was distracted. She didn't react in time, and the flesh bomb didn't even explode. It was destroyed. 70 to 80% of the bones in the remains of Black Beetle's body were shattered. He was like a broken water bag, blood gushing out. His foundation was destroyed. Black Beetle's wraith was like a candle in the wind. It flickered twice, and then it was completely extinguished. Snake Tongue didn't even let out a grunt. At least half of this attack was meant to vent his anger. So what? Luo Nan controlled the Devil Ray, killed Puppeteer, destroyed Black Beetle, and grasped the initiative on the mental plane. Right now, Luo Nan was the master on the viewing platform. Everything he did was correct. The destruction of the flesh bomb meant that Snake Tongue had lost yet another bargaining chip. The situation was even worse. Looking at the entanglement of soul strength now, it was simply a self-directed, self-indulgent farce. The funniest part was that she still didn't know how Luo Nan had split his strength to control the Devil Ray, kill Puppeteer, and then attack again in the blink of an eye. Could it be that Luo Nan's soul strength was limitless? His body. How could his body possibly hold on? On the other side, the body of the Devil Ray was far too large. It was hard to control its balance in the air. It had just slapped away the flesh bomb when the tip of its fin accidentally struck the protective glass at the edge of the viewing platform, directly breaking open a huge gap. Shards swirled in the air, and some of them landed on Luo Nan and Shui Lei's heads. Shui Lei raised his head to look at the sinister bloody cavity on the Devil Ray's abdomen. He was still a bit stupefied. Luo Nan must have been nervous to see it sink bit by bit, but he didn't understand how it had reached this step. Leister, give me a hand. Luo Nan supported himself against the protective glass and slowly stood up. His legs were still weak. Shuelei had no time to think. He rushed forward to support Luo Nan's arm. Only now did he remember to grimace in pain. Was this done by you? Relax. It's quite obedient. It was just as Luo Nan said. The devil ray displayed itself to be extremely docile. It seemed to have recovered some traces of its personality from before its mutation. It sank bit by bit. An incorporeal magnetic field counteracted most of the gravity, and the compressed air that flowed through its pectoral fins and wings stirred up faintly discernible ripples. It carried out fine adjustments to its posture, displaying its ability to hover at an extremely low altitude. The devil ray descended until it was only 15 centimeters from the ground. It was like a standard flight of stairs, but it was a bit too wide. Its enormous body seemed to be rippling endlessly, but not a single drop of water actually touched the ground. Only water droplets sprinkled onto the floor tiles of the platform. Luo Nan sized it up quietly, feeling the obedience and fear of this enormous creature. On a plane that the vast majority of people were unable to reach, the high imitation version of the human-faced arachnid had already fused most of its body into the devil ray's body. Incorporeal spider silk pierced through its body, penetrating and twisting nearly all of its vital organs. It turned the devil ray into a temporary parasitic target. Just like this, the devil ray still had room to struggle and resist. The problem was on an even more marvelous plane. The heavily chained crow invaded the Star River scene of Luo Nan's mental clairvoyance, locking onto the life sketches of the devil ray. It pierced through every star, weaving them into an even more abstract three-dimensional picture. Amidst the deep vibrating sound, the devil ray no longer had a domain of freedom that belonged to it from the inside out. It could only lower its head. Luo Nan extended his hand and lightly touched the side of its pectoral fins that were flipping like waves. The outside was wrapped in a layer of mucus. It was cool and smooth to the touch, but the force was not light. It jolted Luo Nan's palm numb. "You're Nanster, don't." Chapter 313. Shuelei's worry was justified. The smooth and soft back was not easy to stand on, and Luo Nan was very weak right now. If Shuelei had not supported him, Luo Nan would have been swung off the moment his other foot left the ground. Luo Nan had no intention of giving up halfway. He took a deep breath, and lightning flashed in his eyes once more. The marvelous coupling power of the big and small gears penetrated through his body. It was like the stimulation of an electric shock cardiopulmonary resuscitation. The pores of his entire body opened up, and a numbing heat wrapped around him. The heat was dense and undissipated in a small circle inside and outside his body. "Huh!" Shuelei was caught off guard by the feeling of electricity passing through his palm. He let go by reflex, but his reaction was top-notch. He extended his hand to support Luo Nan, but Luo Nan exerted force with his left foot, which was on the edge of the devil ray's back. He stepped out and truly stood on the flat body of the devil ray. The devil ray was not quite used to it. The amplitude of the undulations of its body suddenly increased, and Luo Nan's body involuntarily leaned forward. But under the coupling effect of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice, it shone at the right time. Lines filled with foresight were laid out. It was like an incorporeal spiderweb was laid out on the devil ray's back. The marvelous stickiness, the corresponding sense of balance between Luo Nan and the devil ray, rapidly increased. Luo Nan's own predictions, his control over the devil ghost fish, and the information-sharing mode formed by the coupling of the large and small gears allowed Luo Nan's foresight to penetrate deep into every corner of the devil ghost fish's body. Even the changes in its emotions could be seen. His heart lantern of the eye's orifice had yet to truly reach maturity, but the changes that came from the coupling had already exceeded the limits of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. Gym Master Xiao spoke of a heart lantern, a candle illuminating the 9 hells. Luo Nan had yet to see the 9 hells, but he was not inferior to Gym Master Xiao in the heart abyss. Aside from the separation of skin and flesh, Luo Nan and the devil ray could be said to be one body. They existed around Luo Nan's will. Under this state, Luo Nan took a step, and the force of his body leaning forward was eliminated. He swayed slightly, and he grasped balance. He seemed to be in danger, but he was actually stable. The devil ray beneath him rippled endlessly. Luo Nan thought for a bit and simply stopped moving. The vibrations of the flat body of the devil ray beneath him increased in amplitude, and Luo Nan intentionally controlled the mode. Luonan stepped on the rippling body and moved forward smoothly, all the way to the front of the head of the devil ray. His thoughts stirred slightly, and the two long fins of the devil ray flipped over. These things were originally used by the devil ray to assist in hunting. Right now, Luonan was using them as handrails. He borrowed strength to stand steadily atop the devil ray's enormous body. The devil ray felt a bit awkward being gripped by Luonan's head fins. But right now, it was intimidated by Luonan's gloomy thundercloud-like emotions. The actions of its enormous body were naturally influenced by those emotions. The frequency at which its pectoral fins and wings flapped increased by quite a bit. Nanster, don't be rash. Shuelei wanted to jump up as well, but this would instantly break the balance between Luonan and the devil ray. It would be much more difficult to adjust. Therefore, the devil ray shook its body in a very unfriendly manner and floated up, not giving Luonan a chance. Shuelei was both anxious and angry. He looked at where Luonan's gaze was pointing, and he saw that Luonan had cast his gaze toward the forest behind the curtain of darkness. How could he not know what his best friend was thinking? Shuelei immediately said, Hey, but his mouth was clumsy at this time. He was unable to speak a reason, so he could only ask Zhang Yingying for help. Hurry up and persuade Nanster. He wants to ride the fish and fly over. The series of unforeseen events happened far too quickly, and most of the key segments occurred on the mental plane. Zhang Yingying wasn't too clear about the changes in the situation on the viewing platform. She just felt that there was something wrong with her ears, or that Shuelei's mouth was cramping. Luonan actually took the initiative to contact her just as she was confused. Give me information on Tank. Tank. I say you. Immediately. Luonan's voice wasn't loud, but it was so heavy that it made one's heart flutter. Zhang Yingying felt inexplicably weak. She mumbled, That fellow's physical qualities are excellent. His hard body skills are especially outstanding. He can temporarily increase his defensive power. That's all. Strong defensive power, huh? Luonan looked as if he understood something. What's going on over there? Hey Luonan, you. Oops. Before Zhang Yingying could finish speaking, a terrifying deep howl rumbled over from the other side. Her heart suddenly clenched, and she felt her blood sink. Her brain went dizzy, and her entire body felt bad. She practically cut off the communication by reflex. Her body felt better this way, but when she came to her senses, she could only look at the disconnected communication display and slap her head. On the viewing platform, the devil ray rose 7 to 8 meters into the air. It suddenly opened its enormous mouth, and at the same time, its lower abdomen had 2 rows and 4 rows. A total of 8 cracks opened up. This was where the gills of a normal devil ray should be. However, after the mutation, there were already some mutations. Right now, traces of the flesh and blood of the fish in the crystal pillar still remained on the gills. The vicious aura of a mutant was displayed to the fullest. A low-frequency howl rang out from the gap between its enormous mouth and its gills. The deep howl spread in all directions under the push of the enormous sound pressure. It was like a heavy train passing by, rumbling and vibrating. It caused every frame structure and protective glass on the viewing platform to tremble violently. It was like an earthquake had just happened. However, this deep howl only lasted for less than 5 seconds before the platform suddenly went silent. It did not stop, but the frequency of the sound waves had already sunk below the boundary of 20 Hz, entering the domain of infrasonic waves. The sound waves conducted in the air did not directly affect Snake Tongue, but they still left her stunned. Infrasonic waves had powerful penetrative power, and they transmitted information accurately. Many life forms in the ocean used them to sense danger and determine direction. However, it was relatively rare to see a mutant that could actively emit powerful infrasonic waves. In theory, the devil ray was an enormous mutant. Its pure fleshly strength was already close to A rank, and its fleshly body was flexible and tough. As long as it was used properly, it could use its empty cavity to emit sound. High and low frequencies were not difficult. It was understandable. The crux of the matter was how it was used. Perhaps the devil ray possessed the physical conditions to release shockingly powerful infrasound waves, but this was definitely not its innate ability. Even after it had mutated, it was still the same. Otherwise, its method of hunting for food would have undergone an astonishing change. The management of Cloud City Water Village would not have placed such a dangerous creature in the crystal pillar. In other words, after Luo Nan controlled the Devil Ray, he reshuffled the application of its power. How did Luo Nan do this? And what was he using infrasonic waves for? Several questions piled up one after another, merging with the ominous dark clouds in front of her. It made Snake Tongue feel worse and worse. Her train of thought was inevitably affected by the successive changes, and she began to deviate. But at this moment, a substantial psychic pressure arrived, making her mind shiver. A floating curtain was set up on the viewing platform. For the sake of making sounds, the Devil Ray's enormous body was nearly upright at a 90-degree angle. Even so, the muscles of its back formed a depression, providing Luo Nan with a fulcrum to maintain balance. Luo Nan held the fin in his hand. Visually, he was still a head taller than this enormous creature. Their relative height exceeded 10 meters. He looked down from high above, like a god controlling a gremlin, overlooking the location of Snake Tongue's soul body. Luo Nan's eyes were still glistening with blood, but the dazzling lightning never extinguished. A different kind of chill seeped through the splendid radiance. Snake Tongue's mind stirred, but the arrogance within her did not allow her to continue to be controlled by others. She immediately adjusted the sound of the wind and laughed softly. Lord Luo, the winds are strong at high altitudes. You must be careful. Or perhaps you need my help in negotiating with Tank. She suddenly cut herself off halfway through her words. The high-pitched and suppressed infrasound didn't directly destroy Snake Tongue's vocal spell. But after a period of time, she adjusted it to the most suitable frequency, and a change followed. On the viewing platform, the tourists that Luo Nan had cleared out earlier still had muddled consciousnesses, but they groaned and struggled in a daze. It was as if they were having nightmares. Snake Tongue finally figured out the true target of the infrasound. The carrier of her nightmare vine spell was suffering from the impact of the infrasound, forming a dangerous resonance in the heart and lungs. Was it going to kill indiscriminately? The nightmare vine spell was built on a human carrier. If the entire group of people died, the spell would naturally dissolve and disintegrate. But Snake Tongue had analyzed Luo Nan's personality. She didn't believe that this half-grown child would have the courage to wipe out several dozen. No, hundreds and thousands of lives in one fell swoop. It must be known that the penetrative power of infrasound was very strong. If one really found the correct frequency, then the enormous sound pressure of the mutant Devil Ray, supported by its near-rank power, would sweep through the viewing platform. The ordinary people on the dozens of floors above and below would probably all die. But looking at Luo Nan's posture, could it be that the destruction of his mother's work had stimulated Luo Nan to the point of losing his rationality? Snake Tongue really didn't dare to confirm this as she looked at the bloody light and interweaving lightning and fire in his eyes. A second passed, or maybe even less, before she suddenly heard Luo Nan speak. I shouldn't waste time on you, but I need to practice. Luo Nan's straightforward narration was devoid of emotion. It displayed that Luo Nan still retained his rationality, but this bit of rational strength was unable to wrap around the restless killing intent within. Snake Tongue didn't understand what he meant by practice, but she soon discovered that Luo Nan had excellent control over the infrasound, whether it was in the intensity of the sound pressure or the range of influence. Luo Nan used a technique that Snake Tongue was completely unable to understand. Separated by a layer of Devil Ray, he realized this precise operation. This caused several dozen people to walk on the line between life and death, but they didn't collide with the line. Soon, the effects of this technique manifested. The resonance of the heart and lungs wasn't fatal, but it caused the blood and energy of the unconscious people to roil. It affected their nervous system functions, causing all sorts of discomfort. This resulted in chaotic thoughts and a terrible unstable state of mind while they were unconscious. Snake Tongue cried out to herself that this was bad. The main functions of the fortifications formed by the Nightmare Vine spell were to divert and suck blood. The latter, in particular, required a powerful external force to stimulate the potential of the target. Then the potential was extracted to strengthen the spell. However, Luo Nan's actions had turned the blood and energy of the person into a mess. What potential was there left? One or two wasn't a big deal, but several dozen people were all like this. Even a curse master like Snake Tongue would find it hard to control them in a short amount of time. Chapter 3:14. Snake Tongue never expected that the situation would reverse like this. Luo Nan played a beautiful domino game. Several dozen road signs fell down from the material plane. They affected each other and formed a joint force. They inconceivably and logically affected the mental plane, warping and deforming the defensive structure of the Nightmare Vine spell. The mental attack she was most vigilant against had yet to make its official appearance, but the fortification she had built with so much effort nearly fell apart. Right now, Snake Tongue was at the center of the fortifications. Her mind was shaken, and she felt impatient. This was mostly caused by the backlash of the Nightmare Vine spell. At first, she believed that Luo Nan was going to shatter the foundation of her spell and dig open the fortifications. But after blocking 2 rounds of backlash, she felt that something was wrong. Under the attack of Luo Nan's infrasonic waves, the thick vines born from the Nightmare Vine spell did not wither and become listless. Instead, it was as if they had taken stimulants. They were restless without end. Snake Tongue was aware of her own situation. Her method of erecting fortifications was a bit of a trick. The collapse of the fortifications was fine, but the resulting backlash was truly troublesome. Luo Nan's methods and train of thought caused her heart to be on guard. I can't stay here any longer. An intense thought of retreating arose in Snake Tongue's mind for the first time. But just as this thought was born, a powerful restraining force suddenly rose. The Nightmare Vine spell's blood-devouring intent finally found a nearby target. Snake Tongue cried out to herself that this was bad. She immediately chanted an incantation, disregarding the consequences. She wanted to disperse the out-of-control Nightmare Vine spell. But at this time, the uncomfortable feeling of being seen through became clear once more. Her clairvoyance instinctively allowed her to see Luo Nan's interweaving blood and fire. His eyes were piercingly cold. The mental attack came. It was different from the heavy hammer-like bombardment described in the intelligence report. It was a sharp blade that silently pierced through the chaotic defensive system. The attack pierced through all the defenses and pierced straight at Snake Tongue's weakest soul body. This attack didn't heavily injure Snake Tongue, but it interrupted the spell she had just prepared. It also severed the last bit of possibility for her to control the Nightmare Vine spell. But from Snake Tongue's perspective, the most fatal part was the Nightmare Vine spell's defensive system. It transformed into an invisible cage on the mental plane, trapping her within. She wouldn't be able to struggle free in a short amount of time. Snake Tongue used all her strength and tried all sorts of methods. This included her most dreaded method of interfering and transforming between the mental and material planes. However, none of them worked. Instead, her soul body interfered too much with the material plane after a series of attempts. She gradually revealed herself. Nanster, you've gone too far. Just as Shui Lei rubbed his chest and walked out from the Devil Ray's wide back, he saw a shadow appear in the open space in front of him. It was vaguely like a woman, glowing with a faint green light in the night. Upon closer inspection, that light was clearly a curtain of hair that fell to the ground. Half of it draped over the back, while the other half covered the exceptionally delicate figure of a person. Such a form was like that of a ghost or a spirit. It was so faint that its face could not be seen clearly, as if it would dissipate in the wind at any time. However, upon closer inspection, there were several tens of long strands of smoke surrounding this delicate woman. They were intertwined with each other. When they fluttered, they were like streamers of feathers, but when they were ferocious, they were like a prison cage. This is Snake Tongue? Shui Lei had guessed it, but he was still a little confused. He didn't know why this mysterious expert who had been fighting against them for a long time would suddenly appear, and in such a form at that. This wasn't the same as the ugly and sinister Black Beetle's mutilated body from before, okay? Snake Tongue didn't care about how she looked. Right now, there was no one else in her eyes. There was only Luo Nan. Her soul had left her body, and she had been forced to reveal herself. From her perspective, the situation had already completely collapsed. And all of this was caused by the teenager on top of the Devil Ray's head. Compared to the result, Snake Tongue was even more unable to accept the process. She didn't know at least half of the methods Luo Nan used from the moment he truly unleashed his strength. In other words, she was muddle-headed and ended up in such a state. The most absurd thing was that her and Luo Nan's soul strength were still entangled. But what was the point of this entanglement? The feeling Luo Nan gave her was that he was clearly using a single pinky finger to hook her in place. The rest of his body was casually toyed with. And this was the effect that Snake Tongue believed she could achieve. It wasn't that she had never experienced this sort of experience before, but she never thought that it would reappear on the teenager's body. This was not a reflection of strength, but a difference in insight and realm. Snake Tongue composed herself slightly. It could be said that she had suffered a crushing defeat in today's match. However, it was too early to say that she was consigned to eternal damnation. She was someone who had experienced the affairs of the world for a long time. She soon adjusted her state of mind. She no longer thought of struggling, nor did she conceal her figure. Instead, she bowed to Luo Nan, who was perched high on the Devil Ray's head, with impeccable etiquette. She used the calmest tone she could to admit, "Lord Luo, your skills are marvelous. I've lost." Luo Nan didn't give her anything aside from his ice-cold gaze. Snake Tongue stood up straight after she bowed. She raised her head slightly and locked eyes with Luo Nan's ice-cold gaze. She adopted a posture that was meaningless to her soul body, but it was more in line with etiquette and the situation. "Since I admit defeat, I won't cause any more trouble for Lord Luo. However, I hope that I can obtain a suitable treatment." Luo Nan maintained his silence, but the Nightmare Vine spell grew even more restless on the mental plane. It was the most direct response. Even on the material plane visible to the naked eye, the dark smoke surrounding Snake Tongue's soul body increased by 30%. The intertwining grew more and more obvious. Snake Tongue's mind went a bit cold, but she still tried to use communication to resolve the problem. She tossed out a bargaining chip. "Lord Luo, I can order Tank to stop right now. I'm going to kill him." Luo Nan's simple words nearly caused Snake Tongue to swallow back her words. She was stifled for a second before she responded, "Lord Luo, please don't be impulsive. I want to save your mother's precious work as soon as possible. That's the most." The whistling sound of the wind crushed Snake Tongue's words to pieces. The Devil Ray began to flap its pectoral fins with force. Compressed air rumbled and flowed. Its momentum was astonishing. Just like this, it soared several meters higher. It seemed as if it would leap into the sky at any moment. Luo Nan stared at Snake Tongue from an even higher position. "You've been resisting all this time. I've already wasted 2 minutes here." Snake Tongue obviously had to resist. Even if her defeat was already decided, she wouldn't allow herself to be trampled upon. Clearly, there was an enormous disparity in their understanding of each other. She couldn't help but feel her heart sink. But at this time, she saw Luo Nan close his eyes. His eyelids were still trembling. This action allowed Snake Tongue to confirm one thing. Luo Nan was certainly extremely exhausted. That made sense. How could his body endure the continuous use of such terrifying methods? Perhaps she should continue to waste time? Just as this thought stirred, Luo Nan's eyes opened. Lightning leaped within his bloody sockets. "And you're going to continue wasting time." The Nightmare Vine spell, which was used to devouring its master, fiercely contracted just as Luo Nan finished speaking. At the same time, the second wave of mental attacks arrived. Snake Tongue suffered a pincer attack. Her shadow fluctuated and warped, showing signs of disillusionment. She did her best to resist, but at the same time, she also used her glib tongue to persuade Luo Nan. "Lord Luo, it's true that I will suffer heavy injuries if you insist on going your own way. But it's just as you said. You won't have a future to speak of under the direct wear and tear of the big and small gears. Formatting theory. Coupling. Where will you go to verify these wonderful theories?" Luo Nan heard all of this clearly. He subconsciously released a hand from the Devil Ray's fins and gently touched his cheek. It was a bit numb. He exerted a bit of force, and there was a terrible tearing sensation. But so what? If my mother compromised for the sake of her life, then I wouldn't exist in this world. If I compromised for the sake of my mother's work, you shameless bastards, then even if I saved gear, I would still be bound to leave a stain. And you guys could come at any time. Luo Nan's voice was low and hoarse. He was practically talking to himself. This was his train of thought and thought. Actually, he didn't know if it was right or wrong. But right now, his emotions, intellect, energy, and all the other components resonated. This was what he obtained. There was no need to fake it. Snake Tongue didn't even have the time to get angry after being labeled a shameless bastard. She saw the Devil Ray charge up fiercely. It let out a soundless roar, and countless vine strings were released one after another. There were no substantial sound waves, but the corresponding rupture and tremble on the mental plane was like a sword cutting through 100 bowstrings and a dragon binding net. The rhythm of collapse, 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 and collapse exploded in the depths of her mind. Her ghostly body was actually involuntarily lifted into the air. Gales surged and the world spun. The nightmare vine spell transformed into a knot, wrapping around her as she drifted in the night wind. She was like a bird or beast that had been tied up after a hunt. Snake Tongue's mind was deep from the continuous humiliation, but her heart was also burning with poisonous flames. She shouted out Luo Nan's name for the first time. "Luo Nan, don't you regret this?" What responded to her was the sonic boom of the Devil Ray's wings striking the wind. In an instant, the Devil Ray had already flown out from the viewing platform. It entered 1,000 meters high in the sky without anything to rely on. Luo Nan occupied a position high above the Devil Ray's head and looked down. The heart lantern illuminated the entire region. It was hard for the darkness, the forest, and the buildings to block it. There was nothing else in Luo Nan's eyes. He only saw a small and exquisite gear embedded in the depths of the boundless forest. It was clearly shining. This was the first time Luo Nan used the coupled heart lantern to perform clairvoyance for an extended period of time. The marvelous feeling was like a gushing spring that had just erupted from the ground. Was it his heart lantern that illuminated Gear, or was it Gear's spiritual light that entered his heart? It was certainly the latter. It was the purest light within the darkness, and it was a pupil that circulated with the ripples of life. It billowed, flickered, and revolved there. It drew upon the long river of time, revealing the ancient imprints to the present. It transformed into a silent intent that silently gazed at him. "Mom." This completely unreasonable thought plucked at his heartstrings. Luo Nan was a bit dazed, but he soon strove to open his eyes wide. He wanted to engrave this pupil into the bottom of his heart. However, this scene of waves of light reflecting each other only lasted for an instant. Turbid colors flipped over from within the pure luster. Thick smoke and flames smeared wantonly, willfully trampling on everything. It was as if Luo Nan's chest had been fiercely pounded by a fist. The flames burned straight into his eye sockets, bringing along poisonous smoke. They poured into his heart and lungs, instantly transforming into a field of fire. "There's a fire." The flames roiled within his internal organs. The most laughable bit of wishful thinking in his heart transformed into the poisonous smoke. Luo Nan subconsciously tightened his grip on the thick skull fin in his hand. Pain and fury that burned his heart and lungs rumbled to the top, breaking his throat and causing him to howl. Chapter 3:15. It was already night. The dark curtain of night and the flashy lights interweaved, mixing silence and restlessness together to reveal the primary colors of the city. This was originally a flourishing city that could swallow everything, but after a short 30 seconds, in a corner of the night, in a wetland jungle that had been temporarily forgotten by the majority of people, soundless thunder rumbled like the carriage of a demon god. On the small swamp lake adjacent to Gear, fish leapt up due to the flickering flames. They rushed out of the water, but in the blink of an eye, their bodies trembled and they smashed back into the water. On the shore of the lake, a sandpiper that was treading on the shallow water in search of food suddenly stood up. It staggered 2 steps forward, flapped its wings and flew up. In less than a few seconds, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of panicked birds flew up from the forest with a clamor. Below them, foxes, badgers, mice, rabbits, and even the occasional wolf, deer, and other walking beasts began to frantically and chaotically flee. The vast majority of them were driven by the sudden collapse of the atmosphere of the jungle. Without any destination in mind, they clashed and trampled each other. Some even directly crashed into trees and fell into the water. Screams and cries rang out incessantly. In a flash, the wetland jungle turned into a hellish cauldron. The collapse of chaos rapidly spread. In this chaotic background, Gear leaned against the side of the jungle. Amidst the clanging sounds, a sturdy figure smashed through the window of the second floor. He jumped out and rolled on the ground. Without stopping, he madly ran with all his might, smashing into the depths of the jungle. An invisible and soundless shockwave covered an area of several hundred meters around Gear. Along the way, the forest was littered with dead birds and beasts. Most of them had no external injuries. Their distorted postures made one's heart palpitate. The damage of infrasound was mainly caused by resonance with the natural vibration frequencies of the brain, chest, and abdomen. This caused the nervous system to be in disorder, and the organs to distort and rupture. They could die extremely quickly, or they could die extremely miserably. Witnessing this scene, Tank, who had always regarded himself as valiant, felt a chill run down his spine. His feet ran even faster, and he charged forward in a straight line. He had to rush out of this domain of death in the shortest amount of time possible. As he madly ran, he issued a low roar from his throat. His organs squirmed, and the power of his blood and energy gurgled. With his many years of cultivation, he roused his blood and energy to form a thunderous sound. It formed its own pattern to resist the infrasound. The infrasonic waves that were forcefully suppressed came without a trace. Even though he reacted quickly, the first wave still impacted him quite a bit. Then, he had to forcefully stimulate his lungs to resist the resonance. The feeling was not pleasant, and his internal injuries were also accumulating. What's more, a profound cultivation could control the internal organs, but not the brain. Even with the thunderous defense, it was only temporary. Therefore, he could only step on the mud and water with an ashen face. Like a bear, he crashed into trees and snapped branches as he fled. He didn't dare to think of anything else. Hundreds of meters into the depths of the jungle, his body suddenly relaxed, and the invisible sound pressure finally disappeared. The tank ran for another distance before he dared to stop the thundering sound in his internal organs. However, he could not help but have blood rush up his throat, and his entire mouth was filled with a fishy smell. He spat out a mouthful of bloody foam and used the internal communications channel to contact Puppeteer. Naturally, no one responded. There was also the mysterious snake tongue. He had pulled out a mental connection, but there was no news of her either. This made Tank's mood even worse. At this moment, a communication request came from another line. Yuan Fei. This fellow was already under house arrest. It wasn't easy to make a call, but Tank didn't appreciate it at all. He roared as soon as the call connected. What the hell is going on? Didn't you say this kid has no background? What the hell is a directional infrasonic weapon? Yuan Fei's voice came back from the other side. Are you out of your mind? Out of your mind, my ass. Tank had just walked the line between life and death, and his brain had been messed up by the infrasonic waves. Right now, Tank would bite anyone he saw. Who cared who they were? He blabbered. You motherfasterous Yuan. You even scam your own people. I won't even give you a second glance even if you deliver your ass to my doorstep in the future. You really are out of your mind. Yuan Fei's voice remained calm. In Xia City, only the permanent fortifications at the edge of the wilderness are equipped with infrasonic arrays. Do you want the entire city to die with you by killing you from several hundred kilometers away? Pingjiang District, Acumen College, North Shore Jungle. Look at the way the animals die. I nearly ended up like them. Tank wanted to roar again, but he couldn't help but cough twice in his throat. He forcefully suppressed another mouthful of blood. He had no choice but to lower his voice by an octave, but he still gnashed his teeth in anger. Also, I'll give you a piece of news. The operation team has no more credibility. Puppeteer and Snake Tongue were alive and kicking just a moment ago, torturing and extorting a confession. But in the blink of an eye, they died who knows where. Either the Xia City branch's experts have arrived, or that kid is too deep. Let me emphasize it to you a few more times. Directional infrasonic weapon. Directional infrasonic weapon. Fuck. Yuan Fei was silent for a moment before he said, I will notify Secretary General Gong. Tank roared a few times, and his boiling brain finally calmed down a bit. He also knew that shouting was meaningless, so he said hatefully, Now that things have come to this, there's nothing more to say. I will evacuate according to Plan C. Directly leave the city? Motherf***Ker. Only the military has the ability to use an infrasonic weapon of mass destruction, okay? If I don't leave the city, am I supposed to wait to be a target? Tank walked forward again. He was probably quite a distance away from gear. There was finally a bit of the aura of life here. Birds and beasts were scurrying about in panic. It was chaotic. The chaotic vitality was still vitality. It was somewhat comforting. He spat out a breath and determined his direction. He prepared to enter the dormitory area of South Bank School. No matter how deranged the military was, it was impossible for them to smash infrasonic waves into that area. Yuan Fei's voice continued to enter his ears. Confirm that all communication records have been sent to the cloud, and then destroy the terminal equipment. Tank sneered. He was just about to speak when his heart suddenly trembled. It was as if an invisible hand had directly stabbed into his heart and forcefully closed it. Tank gaped, but the words that were already in his throat completely collapsed. What replaced them was a surging blood and chi that rushed upwards with a crash. It made his brain go blank, and his ears were ringing and screaming. The infrasonic wave came again. Tank felt as if his heart was being crushed to pieces, but his surroundings were clearly quite normal. The noise of birds and beasts still entered his ears from time to time amidst the ringing in his ears. He swept his eyes over them, and they were all alive and kicking. A dense, ominous feeling bubbled up, and Tank suddenly raised his head. A pitch-black shadow covered the jungle. It was an enormous shadow that he could see with his eyes. Bird. Fish? Devil ray. The situation in front of him finally fused with the intermittent information from the communication channel. But what was the meaning of this? Under the pressure of the enormous shadow in the sky, the nearby birds and beasts were scared witless and desperately flew away. In fact, this was not bad. At least there was no killing intent from the infrasonic wave. However, Tank would rather return to the previous situation, where people, birds, fish, and beasts would all be equally distributed. It was not that there was no infrasonic wave now, but that it had truly completed directional restraint, and the terrifying sound pressure energy was completely directed at him. The low-frequency shock wave penetrated the branches and leaves of the forest, and also penetrated his internal organs and skull. From within, a malevolent Grim Reaper's hook appeared, probing the natural frequencies of several of his body cavities, seeking a connection. Tank's reaction was actually very fast. The moment his heart was attacked, he once again stirred up the sound of thunder. However, the problem was that no matter how he forcibly changed the resonance frequency of his internal organs, he used the sound of thunder to form its own pattern. The infrasonic wave that penetrated his skull and internal organs would correspondingly change and firmly lock onto its frequency. After such a series of changes, Tank could not bear it anymore. In particular, the area of his skull where his martial arts could not go up was continuously ravaged by a storm. After a few repetitions, the powerful impact shattered the wall of his willpower, releasing a huge amount of negative emotions. Tank was really about to collapse. Under the effect of the infrasonic wave, his body, which was a complete and harmonious whole, was torn into several conflicting pieces. His chi was in disorder, and his chi and blood were in reverse. Despite having the strength of steel, they collided and rubbed against each other, pulling each other back. This was not a powerful attack of punches, but a strangulation that wanted to tear him to pieces from the inside out. Tank! Through the communication device, Yuan Fei could not feel the pressure of the infrasonic wave that Tank was enduring, but he could hear Tank's screams clearly. Then there was the noisy sound of branches and leaves snapping, the sound of struggling and rolling, the hoarse cursing, and the sound of begging for mercy. Yuan Fei did not try to make contact again. He only calmly listened as the chaotic sounds became even more chaotic, and then abruptly stopped. He suddenly stood up and walked out of the bathroom, ignoring the indifferent watcher, and hurriedly walked in the direction he had come from. The 12th floor of Shangding Great Xia was the same as most of the areas below the 18th floor. The lighting was terrible, and they completely relied on artificial light sources for illumination. And because this floor was not a living area, not even the simulated skylight was turned on. The corridor was suffused with a pale light, and there was not the slightest hint of human presence. In the middle of the corridor, he saw the Deputy Secretary General of the headquarters, who was also the leader of this investigation team, Gong Qi. Gong Qi was a veteran of the Ability User Association. He was about to turn 100 years old, but he took good care of himself. His face was thin, and he looked like he was in his 70s, around the retirement line of a normal person. He was habitually dressed in a formal suit. His posture was upright, and he also had a good posture. At this moment, Gong Qi was standing outside a huge glass wall, coldly staring at the situation behind it. Even though he knew that Yuan Fei was walking over, he did not even spare him a glance. His face was serious. But beside him, there was another centenarian. Although he was half a head shorter, he was sitting in a wheelchair, and he was all smiles. Separated by Gong Qi, he even tilted his head and smiled at Yuan Fei, looking very amiable. Yuan Fei's heart twitched when he saw the smile. His hurried footsteps unconsciously slowed down. The person in the wheelchair was old Yu, the most veteran ability user in Xia City. He was 3 years older than Gong Qi, but he looked to be 30 years older. His hair had already fallen off, and even his eyebrows were sparse. There were only 2 or 3 long eyebrows on one side, and they hung down to the side of his cheeks. He looked a bit comical. Yuan Fei felt that the last few steps were truly difficult to endure. He walked close with great difficulty, and just as he was mulling over how to report this matter to Gong Qi, he suddenly sensed something. He saw the 5 fingers of the leader's left hand behind his back slowly rubbing together. There was a hissing sound. Chapter 316. Gong Qi was one of the first powerhouses to step into the realm of extraordinary in the Ability User Association. He was able to guess the outcome of the investigation team's operation from Yuan Fei's pace. As for the process, whether or not anyone died, or how many died, it was just a minor detail that he didn't need to pay too much attention to. Gong Qi had been an assistant secretary in headquarters for 20 years. He knew secrets and had weathered many storms, so he naturally had his own way of doing things. Even if killing intent arose in his heart, he still maintained a cold expression on the outside. He only used minute body movements to slightly adjust it. He wasn't hiding anything. Hiding was useless. Old man Yu Gang beside him might not be able to climb to the rank of extraordinary for his entire life, but he still had clear eyes and a clear heart. Pretending too much would only make him a joke. Fortunately, Yuan Fei was clever and didn't say it out loud, saving some face. Now that things had developed to this point, Gong Qi didn't feel like saying anything more to Yu Gang. He clenched his rubbing fingers and then unfolded them. He knocked on the glass wall in front of him. The matter of Quantum Corporation's complaint is more or less clear now. The structure of this girl's body and soul is peculiar. There are many coincidences with what the Water Divine General proposed all those years ago. It's very interesting. How about this? I'll take her away. She's here to recuperate. That's trust. Aren't you destroying her by sending her to your hands? At Old Man Yu's age, he did as he pleased. He spoke straightforwardly and fiercely, without any intention of being polite. Gong Qi was used to it. His eyes didn't even twitch. Headquarters conditions are always better. It's better to develop a girl's value. Old Man Yu's eyelids were already about to lose their liveliness. Only his long eyebrows slightly trembled. Develop? You've been doing business very smoothly lately. You've pretty much learned the skills of those big corporations. Gong Qi finally frowned. It's about developing. Shouldn't we give the young a platform to develop themselves? It's just a slip of the tongue. Old Man Yu, why are you so serious? Old Man Yu laughed and shook his head. A slip of the tongue? It looks like you, Secretary Gong, are old and decrepit. You should give your position to the young. I think little Yuan isn't bad. He's very perceptive and quite capable. 2 old things competing. Why did you drag me in? Yuan Fei's face twitched, but he quickly concealed his smile and bowed to Elder Yu. You must be joking, Elder Yu. The association still needs elders like Secretary General Gong and Elder Yu to be at the helm. Only then can we shelter the millions of aptitude users. Old Man Yu laughed again. 50 years ago, it was to shelter us from the wind and rain. 50 years later, it still shelter us from the wind and rain. We can't even put up a shed. It's quite boring, don't you think? Yuan Fei immediately sealed his mouth and pretended to be dead, refusing to make a sound no matter what. I understand the attitude of the Xia City branch. Let's go back first. Gong Qi stopped arguing with Yu Gang and glanced at the glass wall with a cold expression. There, the girl was sleeping peacefully. Her breathing seemed to be faintly discernible, but it was rhythmic and consistent. He glanced at her again, then turned around and left. Old Man Yu grunted twice and said a beat later, "Shall we call it a day? I won't accompany you anymore." Gong Qi ignored him and didn't turn his head, but a string of data flashed through his mind. 2 per thousand. The timing of Quantum Corporation's quotations had always been extremely accurate. The accident investigation team had just left headquarters, and the quotations had already been placed on the desks of several big shots and secretaries of headquarters through reliable channels. 2 per thousand was a small proportion, but 8 trillion had already been invested so far. In the future, there would likely be several times more investment in this super project. Any small change would be magnified to an astronomical figure. What's more, compared to these numbers, which only had secular significance, the results of the project were far more valuable. Looking at the current situation, headquarters' focus should be tilted towards the more realistic benefits. They should do everything they could to fight for ownership of the little girl and pull her into their embrace. But from the information that came out from the Order of Justice, and Wang's decisive methods that night clearly involved an extremely important piece of information. It was one of the ultimate secrets that headquarters had always hoped to obtain for many years. These two matters were stacked together. Which was more important? How to allocate power and resources. Headquarters had a headache. Now it looked like the Apocalypse Laboratory's arrangement of research and excavation was truly a foresight. But when things came to a head, who wouldn't want to have the best of both worlds? Gong Qi returned to his temporary residence and sat on the sofa, muttering to himself in silence. On the other side, Yuan Fei cautiously stepped forward. He still wanted to think of a few words to say, but Gong Qi was unwilling to speak with him. He said, "Leave the operation records. You may leave." Yuan Fei let out a secret sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had seized the time to tidy things up a bit, so he wouldn't be caught blindly. He bowed and left the room. Gong Qi swept his eyes over the records. Even though he had done a preliminary combing, there were still not many valuable things inside. Headquarters had used some method to temporarily destroy the psychic wave network's functions. Correspondingly, the Xia City branch had interfered with headquarters' communication lines. It was already very difficult to ensure the operation team's internal communication. The corresponding data uploading was a bit delayed. Right now, he could only see the part where Puppeteer seized the hostage and threatened him, as well as a few words from Tank at the end. The most crucial part was blank. It could also be seen that the situation had taken a sudden turn for the worse. The situation had collapsed in an extremely short amount of time. From Gong Qi's point of view, Puppeteer, Tank, and especially Snake Tongue had strength. They were quite shrewd. How could they be swept clean in a few minutes? It didn't seem like the Xia City branch's reinforcements had arrived. At the very least, judging from Tank's shouting before his death, it was unlikely that the Xia City branch would be so ruthless. Was it really as Tank said? Was it really the military who made a move and used a directional infrasonic weapon? This toy might be very effective against Puppeteer and Tank, but Snake Tongue had come in soul form. What use would it be? Furthermore, as far as he knew, Snake Tongue was still alive and well. There was definitely something strange going on here. Gong Qi slowly rubbed his fingers. As a leader, he shouldn't have paid too much attention to these minor details. Otherwise, why would he need people like Yuan Fei and the others? The problem was that he was now involved in this matter, and the Order of Justice was racing against time. If he missed this opportunity, he would be held accountable for it. Those old fellows who had worked with him for so many years would probably be more than happy to throw the blame on his head. One less person, one more mouthful of rice. What a simple truth. The strength of rubbing his fingers increased a bit. Gong Qi closed his eyes amidst the low hissing sounds. He seemed to be deep in thought, but he also seemed to be dozing off. Approximately 5 minutes later, his eyes faintly opened. His thoughts were like smoke, dissolving into the void and sinking into the depths of the mental plane. Before he could finish, two thoughts suddenly cut through the air. One was as tight as a heavenly net, and the other was as tyrannical as a towering cliff. The former sealed and imprisoned all thoughts, but the latter, intentionally or unintentionally, suppressed the lofty momentum and made slight contact with Gong Qi's divine will. Gong Qi let out a muffled groan. His complexion turned a bit dark, but he didn't continue. He returned to his expressionless state. Today, he had been enduring, calculating, and pondering. All the reasons were empty. In the end, he was still under someone else's control. Ouyang Chen was a homebody who wholeheartedly focused on research, but not only was Wu Mainyang rather ambitious, her thoughts were even more unfathomable. The confluence of two extraordinaries meant that Xia City was already under a separatist regime. Sure enough, his mission this time was a hot potato. Who could he blame for this? Who told him to act too hastily in recent years? He left those old fellows with a handle to use against him? He was old, and time waited for no one. Gong Qi calmed his mind and no longer thought about it. He contacted Yuan Fei, have the private plane get ready. We're going back tomorrow. Yuan Fei was very surprised. Secretary General Gong? Gong Qi didn't say much. He simply hung up and closed his eyes, resuming his dozing state. But his mind was still active. It went inward and not outward, diving down layer by layer. He had suffered a hidden loss in the conflict just now, but this collision gave him a reason to leave Xia City for a short period of time. It also provided cover for his other actions. At this moment, Gong Qi was circulating his energy within his own domain. On a plane that bystanders couldn't see, there was a fine gauze slowly unfurling like a hanging curtain. The gauze of silence. The gauze of silence. Once he used this, he would have to spend a lot of effort to clean up the loose ends. Gong Qi laughed soundlessly. He concentrated his thoughts in the empty space in the middle of the gauze curtain and wrote words out of thin air. Is it safe? The words turned into smoke as soon as they formed. It was the same momentum as when his thoughts entered the void just now. But this time, it didn't draw the interception of the two extraordinaries. The moment the smoke touched the gauze curtain, it completely fused into it. Not a shred of it leaked out. Gong Qi knew that this layer of smoke had already passed through the special channel of the gauze curtain. It penetrated into the polar domain, which was the deepest part of the mental plane. It advanced towards another terminal in the distance. 3 belts, 1 district, 1 domain. This was a relatively classic method of dividing the mental plane. The polar domain was located in the deepest part of the mental plane. Its name had the meaning of limit. It was deep and boundless. Even extraordinaries would find it hard to sense even the tiniest bit of information within without prior preparation. What's more, a medium like the gauze of silence was marvelous beyond compare. Gong Qi was quite confident that he could hide it from the attention of 2 extraordinaries. He quietly waited. 2 minutes passed, and suddenly a wisp of smoke turned into a diagram that seemed to be connected yet not connected. It was like a mocking ghost face appearing in the center of the gauze curtain. This was a symbol commonly used in secret curse techniques. It had the meaning of ambushing and plotting, but the image of the diagram itself was perhaps more suited to the mood of the person on the other side. If it weren't for the fact that this method of communication was too strenuous, the other side would certainly have used even sharper words to forcefully retort back. That's right. Among the promised rewards, there was this sort of hidden door. The other side definitely harbored ill intentions. What's more, his reputation in headquarters was truly a mess. It was normal for the other side to be angry. Gong Qi didn't care. The difference between an extraordinary and a B-rank cursemaster was like the difference between heaven and earth. It allowed him to ignore the vast majority of hatred, especially when the other side's situation was certainly terrible. Besides, since they were willing to reply, didn't they have to admit defeat? Even if they didn't admit defeat, it wouldn't make a difference. Snake Tongue's slender and delicate appearance flitted through his mind. Her gloomy and cold temperament was rarely seen. The corner of Gong Qi's mouth twitched, and he left behind a new mark in the center of the gauze curtain. This time, it wasn't limited text. Rather, it was like Snake Tongue, a curse symbol that carried a special meaning. Even though he had already simplified it to the extreme, the structure was still layered and crisscrossed. It took a total of 12 cycles before it successively transformed into smoke and was sent out through the gauze curtain of silence. In the end, he thought for a moment and sent out some comforting words. I'll fake my death for 10 days and return you a new life. Gong Qi sneered in his heart as he watched the last bit of smoke enter the gauze curtain. Soon after, he dispersed the strange object with a wave of his hand. He really did fake his nap to rest. For the quickest and most accurate novel reading, please visit Chapter 317. Huff. Huff. I'm dead tired. Papercut sprinted madly all the way into the swamp jungle. His slightly plump body appeared even more sluggish. This damned Acumen College. Flying cars were completely banned. Forcibly entering the system would shut down the car, and he was chased by the school security. He didn't have a smooth journey this entire time. Originally, he was rushing to Ocean Sky Cloud City to provide assistance. He was already in the elevator when he received news that Luo Nan was riding a fish and flying toward Acumen College. He could only turn around and give chase. He ran to the North Shore jungle with great difficulty, but the red alert that had been pressing the entire way had fallen to the normal level. This meant that the emergency situation was over. He was only here to clean up the mess. However, it seemed that cleaning up would be quite difficult. Papercut grinned the moment he entered the jungle. This place had truly exploded. Birds and beasts fled in chaos. Feces and urine flowed everywhere, and the bitter aura of death that assaulted his face nearly made him stumble. He couldn't see too clearly in the darkness, but he could see the corpses of birds and beasts everywhere. This would probably make the nearby ecological research institutes cry themselves to death. But none of this could compare to the large flying fish that danced and spiraled in the air above the jungle, spitting water from its mouth. It was even more shocking and bewildering. A mutant devil ray. Papercut knew about this thing. He had specifically run over to take a look when it was moved to the crystal pillar of Ocean Sky Cloud City. But no one told him that this thing could be used as a firefighting helicopter. He held his neck high, his eyes hurting from looking at it. "Watch where you're going. You're going to crash into a tree." A cold voice rang in his ear, scaring Papercut. Luckily, he quickly recognized the other's voice, especially the extremely eye-catching red jacket in the darkness. "Red Fox, you're here. 5 minutes earlier than you." Papercut sighed. "You caught up to me. I came here for nothing. Is there anything else you need help with?" "Help? Yes, put out the fire. But do you have the lung capacity of that fish?" I'm saying." Red Fox's face couldn't be seen clearly in the darkness, but the mocking intent was very clear. This was his usual style. As for the investigation team, they're just clowns. Their corpses are strewn on the ground. They're just short of being turned into ashes. If I go over now, what else can I do but shout "Long live that person"? Oh yes, the Emperor of Acting Tough is rebroadcasting again. Shoei Channel 3. Have you seen it? Papercut finally discovered that this new friend of his had some emotional issues. Before the incident at Frost River Reality, the two of them could only be considered acquaintances nodding at each other. However, they had stood on the same side many times during that operation. Regardless of whether it was correct or not, they had become familiar with each other. After that, they drank 2 more times and established a friendship. Papercut knew that Red Fox had a stubborn temperament. When he saw things, he would go to the extreme. The more he held it in, the worse it would get. Papercut rubbed his forehead and laughed foolishly, wiping off his sweaty hands. What did Boss Luo do this time? A bunch of people rushed over in a hurry, and they all became funeral arrangements. "Hey, look at my mouth." Just as he was about to say something, he heard the Red Fox sneer. "That's right, it's to take care of the aftermath." As he spoke, Red Fox raised his chin, indicating for Papercut to look to the side. Papercut had actually seen the corpse over there a long time ago. He was able to deduce that it was Tank, a member of Headquarters' Accident Investigation Team. He was famous for being a hard-body expert. There were hundreds of thousands of ability users in the world. Those who could make a name for themselves were not ordinary people. But now, this rather famous character had died a violent death in the swamp jungle. It made one sigh with regret. "Damn, who is this?" Papercut carefully sized up the corpse. His forehead felt numb. He knew rationally that this was definitely Tank, but the scene that entered his eyes had a huge impact. Papercut's mouth drew back. He didn't know what expression to make. This is Tank? From the real-time intelligence, Papercut knew that Tank was a thick and sturdy man. His hard body was valiant, and his frontal defensive abilities were especially outstanding. It was said that if he was prepared, he could withstand 3 consecutive strikes from a 12.7mm heavy sniper rifle. However, what the hell was this pile of fat and rotten dead flesh? What Papercut saw was a super fat man that was 2 or 3 times heavier than him. All the muscles on his swollen face were twisted. It was a pile of dead flesh. From top to bottom, the skin was lacerated and there was not a single piece of intact tissue to be seen. There were even bones that were fragmented. Many of them had pierced through the layer of flesh, and the bones were horribly exposed. With this appearance, all that was left was to prepare a large pot and boil it. Even if it was torture, it wouldn't be like this without dozens of hours of torture. Red Fox walked over unhurriedly. He held a branch in his hand and poked at the corpse's shoulder. "Here. When I escaped from Who City, I gave him a blow in the wilderness." Papercut turned his head in shock. Red Fox didn't react at all to Papercut's gaze. He minded his own business and poked at the corpse with the branch. Originally, this blow was aimed at the back of his heart, but he turned around very quickly. I poked here from the front and broke the dagger. I even watched as he punched Old Five's head. Papercut opened his mouth and hesitated for a moment. In the end, he interjected, "Headquarters personally sent someone to deal with the matter in whose city? It's this person, but not this identity. Back then, he was just the sacred protector of a small order. Who knows when he joined the society? My dagger has a tattoo mark. It can be sensed from 5 kilometers away. It can last for up to 10 years. It can't be wrong." Red Fox's voice grew softer and softer, but the darkness couldn't block his cold smile. "I originally wanted to seize the opportunity to strike again from here. Now, it seems that the difficulty has been greatly reduced." It was unknown when, but his other hand had taken out a pitch-black dagger. The blade pointed downwards. He loosened his 5 fingers, and the dagger fell in a straight line. It pierced into the swollen and soft dead flesh of the corpse, sinking all the way down to the hilt. For a moment, Papercut thought that Red Fox had made a move, torturing Tank to death to vent his anger. But after some more thought, he knew that wasn't right. He looked at Red Fox's depressed mood and wanted to say some words of comfort, but he didn't know where to start. In the end, he could only ask in a low voice, "Did Boss Luo do it?" "Humph. How did he do it?" "I heard the secretary say that it was an infrasound." "That's what I told her. The corpses of the birds and beasts beside you all died the same way. Even I almost died." Ha! Papercut discovered that Red Fox's complexion wasn't too healthy. It was pale and stiff. It turned out that he had suffered internal injuries. Red Fox didn't mind. He picked up the dagger once more and sheathed it. It was said to be a directional infrasound weapon, but no matter how directional it was still a large-scale attack. After discovering Tank's true identity, Red Fox was driven by hatred. He wanted to get close and give Tank a ruthless blow. He forcefully endured the damage of the infrasound to hide in the shadows. He deserved to be affected. But in the end, he made a mistake. Papercut had a faint guess, but it wasn't good to speak of such things in the open. He could only scratch his head and point at Tank's swollen corpse. "Is this fellow also an infrasound weapon?" Red Fox shrugged. "God knows." Papercut was unable to figure it out. He could only take a few photos and record a video. Right now, he had already confirmed that Red Fox would rather hide in the forest and feel the cold wind than go meet Luo Nen face to face. Red Fox had a different feeling in his heart. There was nothing to say about this sort of thing. It was fine as long as he forcefully reversed the situation. He sighed. Who cares how he did it? It's fine as long as he's fine. In any case, he's right there. If there's something he doesn't understand, he can just ask. "All right, are you sure he's fine? I'm half his master right now. Do you want him to apologize to you?" "Get lost." Red Fox flung his hands wanting to leave, but he was forcefully pulled back by Papercut. "Don't. I heard that the kid got himself into a state of serious injuries. His eyes are about to go blind. I don't know a thing about emergency treatment. If you don't help, then I can only use paper ash to paste it. You go paste it. It's none of my business. Let's go, let's go." "Hey, that devil ray doesn't eat people, right?" "Who knows? Would you eat it if I gave you an infrasound?" Holy crap. The two pulled and pulled, but in the end, they still headed in the direction of Gear. When they entered the interior of Gear, the devil ray in the sky didn't eat them, nor did it give them an infrasound. It turned a complete blind eye to them. It just sucked in water from the small lake next to Gear, turning it into a water cannon that smashed into the ignition point upstairs. The so-called water cannon was a true artillery shell made of water. The devil ray went through the special effects of its oral cavity and cheek cavity to condense a large amount of lake water into an extremely solid ball of water. It smashed in through the gaps in the window. It was fast and accurate. Its fire-extinguishing effect was top-notch. Papercut clicked his tongue in wonder, but his head hurt. This fellow has become a spirit. Isn't it too high profile? If we were to be photographed, the internet would explode. Red Fox didn't speak. He took the lead and stepped into the interior of gear. At this time, the power of water and fire had been tossed about on every floor. It was a scene of chaos. It was extremely dismal. They saw a few multifunctional robots along the way. They looked like they had the ability to put out fires, but they had all been smashed to smithereens. This was clearly the handiwork of Tank. However, the fate of this instigator was 10 times more miserable than these robots. "Nanster, where are you?" Papercut called out twice, but no one responded. He found it very strange. He was even more worried. Did something happen again? Underground. Red Fox actually became the one leading the way. He brought Papercut through the fire escape passageway without hesitation. "You cough. The structure here is quite unique. I heard that his mother designed and built it single-handedly. What a pity." Papercut forcefully changed his words, but in the end, he didn't expose Red Fox. It was clear that Red Fox had followed Luo Nan all the way. He only returned to the forest after confirming Luo Nan's whereabouts. Papercut could tell from that night at Frost River Reality that Red Fox became very attentive after resolving his misunderstanding of Luo Nan. Perhaps he was a bit jealous, but there was even more envy and substitution. Perhaps he was thinking that if Hu City was Xia City instead of Hu City. Unfortunately, there were no ifs in this world. Red Fox and Papercut walked all the way to the central control room. They saw the same mess. When Tank wreaked havoc, the first thing he destroyed was the central system. He was really thorough. He was careless. Papercut sighed as he watched. There were a few times when he had come here to teach Luo Nan. He had heard Luo Nan mention that this place had a very strict security system, but Luo Nan didn't really like it. After Luo Nan settled in gear, he sealed off the system. The remaining methods of authority control were like thin paper in front of a professional destroyer like Tank, who had no scruples whatsoever. They were completely ineffective. Red Fox was thinking of something else. Where is he? He had quietly tailed Luo Nan just now. He saw Luo Nan stay in the central control room, attempting to use his wristband to authorize the recovery of the system's operation. Red Fox was unable to get away for a time, so he left with ease. But now, the central control room was completely empty. Luo Nan was gone. Snake Tongue, who had been imprisoned by Luo Nan, was gone as well. For the fastest and error-free novel reading, please visit Chapter 318. Papercut's gaze circled the central control room. Nanster isn't here? He walked into the room as he spoke, but he was stopped by Red Fox just as he took a step. Wait a moment. Red Fox's eyes were cold and clear. His footsteps were soundless as he entered the central control room. His nose trembled slightly as he distinguished the smells in the room. He even went to the elevator and other entrances and exits to investigate. Luo Nan's body reeked of blood due to his eye injury. Red Fox's rigorously trained nose was enough to distinguish where he went. However, Red Fox's expression grew uglier after he circled inside and out. He was unable to understand the information displayed by the smells. There are no signs of him going out. Ha! There are no traces of the elevator or the security door. He didn't go out from there. Papercut blinked and turned to look in the direction they came from. Smells don't show the direction. Nanster also came from here last time. Did he go back the way he came? I can tell. Red Fox didn't even raise his head. He walked to the operating console. This place should have been the core of the entire building, but now it had become a massive garbage dump. It had been completely destroyed by the tank. Red Fox tried to restore the scene. He sized up the operating console that had become scrap metal and quickly discovered an abnormal situation. An enormous amount of electricity had just passed through a certain area of the garbage dump. Since the operating console was destroyed, the electrical resistance was extremely high, leading to traces of erosion. However, there were no wires or the like here. Papercut mumbled to himself as he was pondering. Disappeared into thin air? It doesn't seem like something happened. As he spoke, the paperman he controlled bounced outside the building. He extended his sensory range and confirmed that the Devil Ray was still obediently acting as a firefighting helicopter. There was nothing strange about it. Should I contact the secretary? Red Fox's expression turned even worse, but he didn't object. Papercut had just raised his wrist when an electronic beep rang in his ears. The corresponding thoughts found a place to go. Soon, a kaleidoscope of information connected with his consciousness. He felt livelier all of a sudden. After a lot of trouble, the psychic wave network was finally rebooted. Papercut had long since gotten used to having the Hexa ear by his side during his years in Xia City. He could enter the psychic wave network at any time. His mind immediately relaxed. He searched his friend list in the first instance and shockingly saw Luo Nan was online. The tetrahedron avatar was extremely eye-catching. "Hey Nanster, where are you?" Papercut called out. The red fox suddenly turned his head and stared at him. As for Luo Nan, he was silent for a moment. 1 second. 2 seconds. Then a strange noise rang out, forming a disturbance. It made Papercut believe that something was going to happen to the psychic wave network. Luckily, the static soon disappeared and Luo Nan's voice rang out. "I'm here. Wait a moment." These words sounded a bit hoarse and floaty. Papercut was stunned when he heard them. He hurriedly asked, "Are you okay?" "It's fine," Luo Nan responded in a hoarse voice. She could feel that there was a bit of a problem with his mood. Red Fox couldn't stand this sort of pointless conversation. He also connected to the psychic wave network and bluntly asked, "What about Snake Tongue?" "Suicide." Red Fox and Papercut looked at each other. Luo Nan had no intention of explaining further. He asked them in reply, "You guys are in the central control room. Everything is fine over there, right?" "It's all right." Before he finished speaking, another person requested to be connected to the call, and it wasn't just one person, but several people. He Wayne, Zhang Yingying, Crag Burst, Bamboo Pole, Octopus. Even Bai Xinyan came to join in on the fun. Practically all the ability users that Luo Nan knew contacted him like a swarm of bees. Luo Nan never expected that he would have this sort of popularity. He wasn't good at this sort of situation, and he hoped for a quiet environment, especially right now. Luckily, the other side was aware of this sort of situation. He Wayne immediately took the lead and established an internal channel. She pulled in all the relevant personnel and switched to message mode. Only she, the creator of the channel, retained her voice to ask questions on behalf of everyone else. "Mr. Luo, how is your body? How are your eyes?" As He Yuan spoke, all sorts of words rapidly flooded the internal channel interface. It felt even livelier than the voice mode. Luo Nan just responded with a low and hoarse voice. "I'm fine. I can see." "Mr. Luo, I don't recommend that you stay in gear for too long. Someone has already posted photos and videos of the Devil Ray flying into the sky online. The activity in the northern jungle is too big. We need professionals to deal with the aftermath." He Yuan maintained a calm and rational attitude from beginning to end. She could more or less guess Luo Nan's thoughts. She added, "I already notified the firefighters to rush over there 10 minutes ago. They should be here soon." "I know." Luo Nan's mood was subtle, but his response was straightforward. "I'll leave immediately. It's fine if Mr. Luo returns to Cloud City Water Village. The facilities of the Sacred Heart Hospital here are quite complete." "Okay." Luo Nan's response grew more and more brief. He went offline right after his reply. It was clear that he didn't want to say anything more. This attitude made the people in the internal channel very baffled. "What's wrong? Are you angry?" Anyone would be angry after being tormented by those people from headquarters. "Are you sure it's not because of a bunch of powerless idiots?" Hey! Think about yourself. Is it a stress reaction syndrome? He's shocked and angry, and he even killed people. Black Beetle, Puppeteer, Tank, and Snake Tongue. A total of 4 lives. Oh, has he ever killed anyone before? I think he hasn't? Zhang Yingying wasn't too sure. Papercut didn't say a word at this time. He just uploaded a few pictures. They were all displays of Tank's corpse from various angles. Red Fox annotated, "Boss Luo's masterpiece." Zhang Yingying sent a dumbstruck emoji and activated the bullet screen effect. She slid from right to left. The others followed one after another. A series of sluggish and confused emojis slid across the corpse pictures. Luo Nan didn't care what the others said about him. After ending the call, he maintained his original posture. He opened his eyes wide, ignoring the pain in his eye sockets that was about to go numb. He looked around his surroundings. The ring-shaped space, the ring-shaped chair, the wall lamp, the bookshelf, the footstool, and other arrangements were arranged. This narrow space created a comfortable and calm atmosphere. This was none other than the tree-hole cabin on the withered tree sandbar. Luo Nan looked at the furnishings in the room blankly. Then he looked at his own hands. Several seconds later, he suddenly stood up. He supported himself against the slightly damp tree wall and walked up the stone steps shakily. He arrived at the upper level of the treehouse. In front of the viewing window, the scroll window spread out to both sides. The darkness inside and outside quickly converged together, attempting to drown out all existence. Luo Nan could still see that the withered tree sandbar and gear were separated by a distance of 500 to 600 meters. From this angle, gear was like an unfinished painting. Only a portion of the dark silhouette could be seen. 1 or 2 spots of fire that had yet to be completely extinguished were still flashing. How did he get here? What happened in between? What did he see? Actually, Luo Nan wasn't in a rush to obtain the ultimate answer. He wanted to talk about everything he had just experienced to others. He wanted to discuss it, big and small. He wanted to talk about it for as long as he wanted. But the current situation determined that there was no such person. He could only silently gaze at gear. He watched as this building silently towered in the long river of time, revealing its simplest and most insignificant side to the people of the world. At this time, the rumble of a real firefighting helicopter could be heard from the distant night sky. On the psychic wave network, He knew that Luo Nan had logged off, but she still left a message to remind him. She wanted him to meet up with Red Fox and Papercut as soon as possible. She also wanted him to do his best to hide the Devil Ray and meet up with them at Cloud City Water Village. Luo Nan didn't reply. His gaze lingered on gear. His mind seemed to be clear yet not clear. Coupling theory could explain what he had encountered, but pure theory was ultimately unable to fully display the entirety of a great work of art. It was rigorous. It was magical. It was beautiful. Most importantly, it was his mother's work, and I was only able to glimpse one side of it. It shouldn't be like this. Luo Nan's body leaned forward, his head already sticking out of the viewing window. The autumn night wind was wrapped in ash and the fishy smell of the jungle. It pounced into his nose. It was clearly ice, but a fiery stimulation penetrated straight into his brain. His emotions, his impulses, were hard to suppress. Luo Nan's hands tightly gripped the bottom edge of the viewing window. His thoughts stirred, and the devil ray that was drawing water from the small lake not too far away immediately gave up on its work. Its pectoral fins and wings flapped lightly, and its enormous body arrived above the submerged sandbar. It leaned against the edge of the withered tree. Go! Luo Nan let out a low shout and exerted force. He actually let his body leap out of the viewing window and fall to the edge of the devil ray's pectoral fins. His long wings took advantage of the situation to fold slightly, allowing his body to slide all the way to the flat back of the large fish. The viewing window silently closed, restoring the appearance of the withered tree. Luo Nan did his best to stand up, but his legs were still a bit weak. He nearly fell down again. Fortunately, the devil ray's tough body gave him a timely elastic support. Luo Nan didn't wait for his balance to be completely restored. He staggered forward until he arrived at the head of the devil ray. He grabbed a pair of flipped-up cephalic fins, and only then did he let out a long sigh of relief. He spoke softly. Fly then. Find the best angle. The devil ray let out a deep cry, and the whistling air currents broke a few branches of the withered tree. Its enormous body swam upward, reaching a height of over 100 meters in the blink of an eye. Finally, his unusual actions attracted the attention of others. Papercut's shout seemed to come from the jungle. There were people shouting and reminding in the hexa ear and the wristband. Luo Nan didn't respond at all. He just looked at the sky. The Pingjiang district where the academy was located was part of Xia City's specially designated educational function district. Even though the skyscrapers of Cloud City Water Village towered into the clouds, this district was still one of the areas with the lowest average building heights. The distribution of air traffic was relatively sparse. Looking up, one's field of view was actually quite wide. The weather tonight was pretty good. A few stars impatiently broke through the light pollution of the city and appeared in the corners of the horizon. But as the devil ray flew upward, the cold wind assaulted Luo Nan's face. In Luo Nan's mind, in his eyes, and in his ears, there was a different scene. It was the surging mist and ice crystals. It was the astral winds that roared like dragons. It was the vast land of a fiery hell. It was a marvelous world that Luo Nan had never imagined in his 16 years of life. It was dangerous and deadly, yet it possessed the allure of a poppy flower. Luo Nan was practically unable to distinguish between reality and illusion. Then the tall body of the Devil Ray returned to normal, and it began to circle in the sky. It was already over 1,000 meters in altitude. Looking down from high above, one could see the rotation of heaven and earth, the meandering rivers, the dark void, and the light pollution of the city painting the background. It formed a dark and turbid and oppressive scene that flooded the horizon. Millions and millions of living beings came and went, either numb or wantonly, spilling the heat of life. Luo Nan had never truly understood this city. Right now, Xia City was merely the background of his existence. What he paid attention to was just an insignificant point beneath this background. Gears. From Luo Nan's perspective, this was the only place that was pure and clear. No matter how chaotic the background elements were, as long as he approached this place, the visible and invisible order, the visible and invisible gears, crisscrossed between heaven and earth. They converged and revolved around the marvelous orifice, slowly revolving. Rigorous, mystical, beautiful. Reality. Luo Nan stared blankly at this soul-shaking gorgeous scene. It was possible that he was the only one who understood this scene. His self-consciousness seemed to operate along with it, becoming a part of the invisible and grand order. It expanded outwards layer by layer, combing through all the living things of heaven and earth that he could sense. So he knew that within a range of several dozen kilometers, practically all the high-definition cameras on the tall buildings in the area had turned to look at him. There were also high-altitude ships, and there might even be orbiting satellites at an altitude of several hundred kilometers. They locked onto the night sky where he stood, staring coldly at him. As for the mental senses, strands and strands of them spread out from every mental plane. It wasn't just one or two. It was unknown how many people used various methods to pay attention to this part of the world, to pay attention to his every movement. But compared to the millions and millions of residents of Xia City, compared to the billions and billions of living beings of the world, what did this amount to? Knowledge was order. Ignorance was disorder. The information of disorder was like an illusion. It melted and disintegrated within the glowing mist of this enormous metropolis. It was like that figure, that name, that soul. The pride that surged within Luo Nan's heart had no place to go. Thousands and thousands of words were needed to narrate her fantastic thoughts and her great accomplishments to the world. The ambiguity of a few words could be tens of thousands of kilometers. Who could confide in the boundless world? Who could understand? Could it be that it was the crazy grandpa from the sanatorium? In the end, it's just me. Right now it's just me. It's just me. The Devil Ray suddenly dove down from 1,000 meters in the air, sensing Luo Nan's mood. Its enormous flat body seemed to be tied by long incorporeal threads of order. It transformed into a bizarre and spectacular giant kite, revolving around the center and rapidly spiraling. Great winds howled, and Luo Nan's eyes burned hot. His field of vision warped. Only the self-rotating gear revolved around time, vaguely like a billowing pupil. It was like the center of the world, the source of order. All living things in the world merged within it, linking and coupling with his thoughts. Boom! The vast river of stars and millions of stars faintly trembled within the surging storm of emotions. The millions and millions of starlight were like water droplets, turning into a river and an ocean in the blink of an eye. The surging soul strength burst the external neuron, overflowing in the blink of an eye. It was like a great river bursting through its dike as it rushed downwards. It was this rush that brought the two gears of different sizes up. It was like the waves of a cart beating against the water, finding an opportunity to rotate in sync. Energy rubbed, lightning burst forth, crisscrossing and weaving. In the blink of an eye, it was impossible to remember how many there were. Luo Nan's blood and energy surged. Was it pain or excitement? How could he experience it? He could only let the surging emotions push him as he tore his throat and screamed. There were no misgivings. There were no considerations. There were only the purest emotions mixed with lightning to rumble on the mental plane. Mom! The melancholy sound of thunder crushed through the void. Chapter 319. The Devil Ray was wrapped in a whistling stream of air as it streaked across the sky above the viewing platform. It tilted its body slightly, and its flat body passed through the frame structure. Its momentum dissipated amidst the wave-like undulations. It hovered above the pool and slowly descended. Luo Nan's feet didn't move. The Devil Ray stirred its back muscles like a conveyor belt, sending Luo Nan down. Luo Nan only staggered a bit when he slid down from the edge of its pectoral fins. Shuelei had been waiting to the side for a long time. He promptly went forward to support Luo Nan. He was only wearing a thin round neck shirt, but his body was covered in sweat from anxiety. He only let out a breath of relief when he firmly grasped Luo Nan's arm, but another wave of energy rose up. "Nanster, have you gone crazy?" Luo Nan's voice suddenly dropped an octave before he could finish speaking. "Your eyes." "I'm fine." Luo Nan indicated for the Devil Ray to sink into the ocean and enter the central crystal pillar. He broke free from Shuelei's support and walked to a slightly drier place by the side of the pool, through the surging pool water. Luo Nan's eyes were still burning and aching when he landed, but he blinked a few more times. The cool autumn wind blew past, and soon there was a layer of coolness. It was like rolling beads, like a film of water. It permeated the moisture layer by layer. There was a tingling sensation in the middle, but it greatly diminished after a while. His eyes, forehead, and face were all soaked with coolness. It was quite comfortable. Luo Nan didn't think it was a big deal. The coupling electricity between the two gears could tear, but it could also repair glue. The current control wasn't too precise. Perhaps the first wave was damage and all sorts of tearing, but the second wave of electricity could be generated and welded together. On the other hand, it was possible for the gears to explode just as they were getting better. But since it was coupling, the exchange of information and synchronization were natural. The probabilities were shifting toward the good side. This feeling grew more and more distinct as time passed. This was just Luo Nan's own thoughts. Shuelei saw Luo Nan's pupils, and they had a different feeling. Shuelei seemed to be looking at the eyes of a cold-blooded animal. Though they didn't possess long and narrow pupils, the densely woven cracks encircled them. They were like glass balls that could shatter at any time. Shuelei instinctively shivered when he saw this scene. He immediately grabbed Luo Nan and took him to the hospital for an examination. However, in the blink of an eye, the aura from the other side caused his eyelids to twitch. Shuelei composed himself and followed the aura to sense it. When he looked again, it was still the same shattered crack, but it was extremely similar to a cracked layer of ice. At first glance, it looked gloomy, but within it seeped a dense cold light. Occasionally, light waves would jump, like lightning tearing apart the night sky, extremely dazzling. Facing this pair of strange eyes, he didn't know what to say for a moment and subconsciously handed over the notebook in his hand. This was Luo Nan's loose-leaf notebook. Luo Nan had tossed it onto the platform when he leaped onto the Devil Ray's back. Shuelei picked it up and returned it to its rightful owner. Luo Nan gripped the leather cover and laughed, finding it hard to conceal his exhaustion. Shuelei's tone softened a little. "Let's go check it out." "Sure." Luo Nan knew that this was unavoidable, so he agreed quite straightforwardly. Turning his gaze, he saw a woman in Shuelei's Taoist robe sitting on a bench beside the pool. He couldn't help but feel curious. "Senior Sister Tian is still here?" Tianxi heard Luo Nan call her name. She bit her lower lip and raised her head. Her lips were so white that no color could be seen. Her expression was a bit stupefied. It was unknown whether it was the effect of the cold or the power of fear. She had been held hostage by the throat and was on the brink of death several times. Then she fell into the heavenly ocean lake, soaking her entire body. Her knitted clothes were extremely heavy when they entered the water. When she came out, the cold wind blew, making her feel exceptionally cold. Her shoes had already fallen into the heavenly ocean lake. Her slender legs were only covered in silk stockings. Her legs stuck to the cold and wet ground. She was in a sorry state. It was late autumn, and the chill was deep. Though Shuelei had kindly given her Taoist robes to warm her body, she still had her arms and legs clenched together. It was hard to conceal the shivering chill. Shuelei whispered, "She's probably too frightened. She's having a bit of a stress reaction. She just stays there, not moving. I can't persuade her no matter what." Luo Nan frowned when he heard this. He didn't know what to do for a time. His gaze shifted and he saw that the viewing platform had clearly been cleaned up. The corpses of Black Beetle and Puppeteer were gone. The unconscious tourists who had been cleaned up had all been moved away. The traces of battle had been cleaned up. Shuelei understood. He whispered, "Secretary, he arrived not long after you left." She cleaned up the area and arranged for Brother Zhou to keep an eye on things here. A calm man of around 40 years old walked over from the end of the pool. It was Zhou Hu, the person Shuelei spoke of. He was one of He Yuan's bodyguards, as well as her trusted aide. He had met Luo Nan twice before, and he was Tiger Burst's comrade. He was no stranger to Luo Nan. "Brother Zhou." Luo Nan put Tianxi's matter aside and greeted him politely. Zhou Hu's words and actions were steady and appropriate. "Mr. Luo, according to Miss He's instructions, I'll be waiting by your side tonight. I'll do some odd jobs. If there's anything you need, just tell me." Luo Nan didn't refuse. He nodded in thanks. Zhou Hu's gaze swept over Tianxi's body. He had a general idea of the situation. He lowered his voice and said, "Missy said that this person should be suppressed quite badly. She's still struggling in a hostage situation." Luo Nan thought for a bit when he heard this. He took 2 steps forward. Tianxi's entire body shrunk back when she saw Luo Nan's pupils, which seemed to crack like ice. But she soon came to her senses with a start. She forcefully suppressed her fear and moved closer. She raised her head to look, terrified and pitiful. "Junior, I'm sorry." Tianxi didn't have her usual calm and bright appearance right now. Luo Nan furrowed his brows and bent down slightly. "Senior sister, the weather is too cold. Go change your clothes. Then let's chat some more, okay?" He had already used a hypnotic technique. Tianxi subconsciously grunted. Her mind was inevitably a bit absent-minded. Luo Nan saw this and said, "Leicester, you accompany her." Shuelei shook his head fiercely. He practically didn't put in any effort tonight. Just as he was feeling regret, he made up his mind to stay close to Luo Nan. "Enough. Let's go together." Luo Nan originally didn't have any special opinions about Tianxi. But because of gear and coupling theory, his attitude was greatly different. There was a large shopping center inside Ocean Sky Cloud City. It was very convenient to change clothes. He had climbed the slippery back of the Devil Ray before, and he had put out the fire in gear. His body was covered in mud and ash. His white coat was long since ruined. His face was probably not that good either. He needed to clean it. The group took the elevator down to the shopping center. Luo Nan didn't have any intention of immediately meeting up with He Yuan and the others. The main reason was that the internal channel of the psychic wave network had just been established, and it was about to explode with noisy messages. His previous impulsive actions had already been verified by the large amount of photos and videos he had pulled down from the network. His head sank into a complete mess, and Luo Nan didn't know how to respond for a time. When his emotions were stirred up, he hated that he couldn't pour out the greatness of his mother's work to the entire world. But now that his emotions had ebbed and his reason had returned, he understood that the secrets within were not suitable to be divulged to outsiders. How to respond was truly a troublesome matter. Right now, he was so tired that he didn't want to use his brain. He might as well be willful and slowly talk about it. Shuelei wanted to say something about Luo Nan's actions, but he didn't open his mouth. Zhou Hu completely obeyed Luo Nan's arrangements. As for Tianxi, she was like a marionette. Whatever Luo Nan said, she would do. The group arrived at the 101st floor, found a brand store nearby, and bought clothes. Luo Nan just washed his face and threw away his white lab coat. He just had to make do with everything else for now. As for Tianxi, no matter how much she made do, she still needed to spend some time. The 3 men waited in the store. Xie Junping just so happened to call at this time. He smacked Luo Nan in the face with a question. "Where did you go?" Luo Nan swept his gaze over the dazzling array of women's clothing. "Buying clothes." Xie Junping clearly choked. He paused for a moment before asking, "Where's Leicester?" "He's with me." "What's wrong?" Xie Junping chuckled. "Nothing. Nothing. I was just asking. You two suddenly disappeared. Tang Yi came over just now, but she couldn't find you." Luo Nan thought of something. He tilted his body slightly, and the corner of his eyes swept over the most eye-catching decoration outside the store. It was the crystal pillar in the center of the building. The devil ray swam within it, attracting quite a few customers to stop and watch. Help me ask Yao Feng what the approximate price of the mutant devil ray is. So it really is. Cough cough cough. It's nothing. I'm a bit choked. Xie Junping suddenly raised his voice and forcefully suppressed it. This was the end of Xie Junping. The latter half of his sentence was to deal with his companion. He turned around and forcefully suppressed his voice. He could not help but tremble. He was most likely excited. Nanster, why you? It's really you? Do you know that the internet is about to explode? Yao Feng just got the news. He's in a terrible fix right now. Oh right, he probably didn't recognize you. Then he's really slow. Luonan didn't want to talk too much for now. He reminded Xie Junping, I'll be there in a bit. Don't forget to help me ask the price. He hung up the call after speaking. Luonan admitted that asking Yao Feng for a price was an impulsive idea. He really enjoyed the experience of looking down at gear from the sky. He enjoyed the feeling of its mysteries to his heart's content, and he appreciated the beauty of the building. It would be ideal if he could get his hands on it. Of course, there was a more realistic factor. The mutant devil ray possessed tyrannical fleshly strength, and its body was extremely flexible and tough. Its maneuverability was excellent, and it was quite versatile. It could replace Luonan's frail fleshly body to a large extent, and it could do some confrontational work. In the following period of time, whether or not he had this weapon with him was the key to his survival. Luonan was really a bit tired. He simply sat on a stool in the clothing display area and flipped open his notebook. The flexible e-ink screen lit up. He subconsciously opened the second level of the drawing software. The brilliant river of stars almost blinded his eyes. The heart lantern of the eye's orifice, under the coupling effect, almost swept away the turbid dark clouds in the river of stars and illuminated the 8 poles. Numerous life sketches formed thousands of constellations that revolved inside and outside the format pyramid. The vast star atlas could almost melt a person's mind into it. Luonan didn't look at it in detail. He just let out a low sigh and returned to the upper level of the software. He created a blank interface in passing and the electronic pen sketched out lines. He had just started when he paused. He had a myriad of thoughts, but he didn't know how to arrange his pen. Chapter 320. Luonan raised his head in astonishment. He didn't quite understand. Shuelei continued, the gym master needs to rest for a period of time after moving. The gym doesn't need my help for the time being. The society I'm a member of isn't that interesting. You might as well tell Brother Ping to transfer me over. Wouldn't it be better if we looked after each other? Luonan subconsciously said, having someone look after each other is good. Right now, the ownership of gear was still in the midst of a bidding war. It didn't matter if the Mystic Arts Research Society won in the end, or if the Construction Society took over. Luonan was alone and powerless. He had a trustworthy friend to help him. Hold on. How was this a matter of looking out for each other? Luonan understood Shuelei's thoughts. Shuelei was rushing to be his bodyguard. He admitted that if Shuelei really did protect him, he would be able to make up for the weakness of his body. Coupled with his mental attacks and other methods, he would have no problem getting through tonight's situation. However, Luonan was even more clear on the fact that trouble would not come in the future. If trouble really did come, then it would not be the same as today. It's not just the two of us. Leicester, there are many other situations here. There's also your parents, my aunt's family. Luonan's voice was low. He spoke and spoke, but then his voice was cut off. After his impassioned emotions returned, a myriad of thoughts unavoidably grew in his mind like weeds. Frankly speaking, the HQ's investigation team's tricks had truly shocked him. Forcibly arresting, taking hostages, burning houses. This group of people had no scruples at all. They could do anything. And this was just headquarters. Luonan did not forget that Quantum Corporation, especially Yen Yonghua, had always coveted gear, regardless of their motives. The order of justice seemed to have shrunk back for now, but headquarters was so proactive. As the parties involved, would they really act like ostriches? There were also the various powers that Luo Nan could not clearly count. He could see from the chaos created by the human-faced arachnid that there were far too many greedy people. It was hard to say when someone would jump out. How were he and Xue Lei going to deal with them? Fine, there was also the Xia City branch. But from today's situation, it was better to beg for help than to beg for help. Even if He Yueyin and the others did their best to rescue him, they were limited by time and space. It was impossible for them to appear in front of him in the first instance, let alone his family. Luo Nan did not know how to express his worries to Xue Lei for a time. At this moment, Tianxi walked out of the fitting room after changing her clothes. Now was not a good time to pick out clothes, so Tianxi just chose a nearby women's clothing brand and casually matched it. Perhaps it was really cold after falling into the pool. She wore a woolen coat with a turtleneck and a white sweater, which covered her upper body well. She was wearing a dark pleated dress that hung all the way down to her ankles. She was also wearing a pair of high-heeled Oxford shoes that she had bought earlier. She was sweating a little in the warm shopping mall. Her long hair was still damp, and her cheeks were slightly red, as if she had just taken a shower. Tianxi walked step by step until she was before Luo Nan. Her eyes drooped and she spoke softly. "I've kept you waiting." Luo Nan didn't say anything. The matter of Xue Lei transferring to the Order Club wasn't something that could be settled just by talking about it. He closed his notebook and stood up. "Let's go." Mr. Luo. Zhou Hu, who had just gone out, rushed over and handed him a pair of brown glasses that had just been opened. "Your eyes should be covered first." Xue Lei came to a sudden realization. Those patterns are quite horrifying. I should cover them. No wonder He Yueyin chose Zhou Hu to be her bodyguard. He really was a very careful and thorough person. Luo Nan expressed his thanks, took the glasses, and put them on. He walked toward the elevator first, and Xue Lei and the others followed him. The devil ray spiraled silently in the crystal pillar behind them, following them down. According to the original plan, Luo Nan would be admitted to the hospital for an examination after he returned. But Luo Nan had just spoken to Xie Junping about the matter of the devil ray, so he had to go to the party scene to see the specific situation. Zhou Hu, who was following by his side, had no objections to this. The group soon returned to the 88th floor. According to the schedule of the party, it was time for the warm-up to end and for the party to officially begin. But by the time Luo Nan and the others arrived, the area surrounding the central crystal pillar was clearly a bit chaotic. Buzzing sounds lingered in their ears. Luo Nan contacted Xie Junping, and Xie Junping informed him, "A skylight has been opened in the crystal pillar. Nothing like this has ever happened since the building was completed. Many events have been postponed for the sake of safety." Yao Xir lost face and is cursing right now. Wait a moment. Xie Junping and Hu Huaying were still conversing with Yao Feng. They were unable to get away for a while. Luo Nan swept his gaze around. It was quite a coincidence that the entrance to the elevator they took happened to be near the sofa corner where they first met Yao Feng and He Donglu. There was no trace of the troublesome characters at this time. There were only 2 or 3 strangers sitting there chatting. The sofa corner was quite spacious. There was no problem in resting and discussing. Luo Nan mentioned this to Xie Junping and led Xue Lei and the others over. They prepared to rest there for a while and wait for Xie Junping and the others to come over and rendezvous. Luo Nan and the others turned left, but there was a group of people on the right. They just happened to see them come out of the elevator. Someone immediately let out a strange cry. Heavenly thunder and earthly fire. How fierce. They even changed their clothes. What kind of scene is this? There were 2 of them when they went, but 4 came back. Wah! You can't judge a book by its cover. Zhu Maoshuan's expression grew uglier and uglier as he listened to his friends chatter. Most of them were pointing at Tianxi. Their group had been frightened by Black-Tooth Sunglasses Man. Their drive had been dampened, and they ran out from the 124th floor. It was quite humiliating. They recovered with great difficulty and went up again. But when they pressed the button, a white-collar worker's face was covered in blood. His head was nearly smashed flat, and he had sunk into a deep coma. This gave them yet another shock. They didn't know what had happened up there. Then the police got involved, and the group had no choice but to return to the party venue. The party activities had gone awry. It could be said that their journey was not smooth. Just as they were feeling vexed, they suddenly saw Luo Nan and Tianxi return. They looked like they had seen a ghost. Zhu Maoshuan began to grind his teeth. His friends, who were close to him, saw that his eyes were bloodshot and that he had the appearance of a butcher. Each and every one of them shut their mouths. It made sense when they thought about it. Their relationship had been established, and their clothes had been changed. If Zhu Maoshuan were to get jealous now, wouldn't that be the same as wearing an oily green hat on his head? Zhu Maoshuan stared at the backs of the two people. He didn't move. It would only be more humiliating to tear them apart today. But after today, things would be different. Let's go. Zhu Maoshuan forcefully swallowed his anger, turned around, and left. There were dozens of sharp thoughts stabbing back and forth in his mind. He was just waiting for an opportunity to vent them out. Zhu Maoshuan had just turned around when Zhou Hu and Xue Lei, who had already hidden themselves in the stream of people, turned their heads to glance at him. It was a sensitive time. They obviously sensed such malicious gazes. Zhou Hu even moved closer to Luo Nan's ear and asked, "That person?" Luo Nan shook his head. As long as Zhu Maoshuan didn't immediately rush over to fight, Luo Nan didn't have the leisure to pay attention to him. They arrived at the corner of the sofa in a few steps. Luo Nan wasn't polite. He made a slight gesture and sat down first. His back was pressed against the soft sofa, and he had something to lean on. The feeling of exhaustion was like evaporating steam. It enveloped his entire body in an instant, evaporating all his strength. He unconsciously sighed. He was a bit tired. Nanster? Xue Lei didn't sit. He bent over to look at the color of Luo Nan's face. He was a bit worried. Luo Nan raised his eyelids and looked at Xue Lei's wrinkled face. He laughed involuntarily. The mind comes before the energy. The energy comes before the strength. The weight of exhaustion comes after that. It looks like I've passed today. These were the words of advice that Xue Lei had given him when he first began to learn the cultivation technique of the eye's orifice. Luo Nan had indeed put these words into practice when he faced the enemy today. He didn't consume too much of his strength, but the comprehension and application of order frames, gear coupling, and other concepts consumed an extreme amount of energy. In addition, he had returned to rescue his mother's work. His impatience and surging emotions had damaged his mind. In a safe environment, the accumulated feelings of exhaustion exploded forth. He really wanted to sleep. Xue Lei was probably the one who could understand Luo Nan's state the most. He advised, "Why don't you just sleep for a bit? The damage to your mind will damage your essence and energy. Forcefully holding on is a bottomless pit." Let me clarify a few things first. Sister, he should be here soon. Luo Nan thought about the fact that there was an outsider beside him. He forced his eyelids open and turned to Tianxi. "Senior Sister Tian, I'm sorry for today. I've let you suffer a calamity. However, it's all in the past now. You should be safe for the time being. If Senior Sister you..." Before Luo Nan could express his meaning clearly, an aura came from behind him. A snow-white leg strode over from the back of the sofa. It nimbly crossed over the back of the sofa, and a slender figure suddenly appeared. She wore a very simple t-shirt paired with denim shorts. Autumn was thick, and she wore summer clothes. She was quite willful. There was only one person Luo Nan was familiar with who could dress like this: Zhang Yingying. "What are you looking at?" "I rushed over from the seaside. I didn't wear a diving suit. I'm doing you justice. Of course, if you die, I'll change into a suit and collect your corpse." Zhang Yingying sat down next to Luo Nan. She stared at him unwaveringly, carefully sizing him up to see if he was missing any parts. Luo Nan's eyes were nearly unable to blink. He didn't pay much attention to her. He just grunted. If this were any other day, Zhang Yingying would have jumped up a long time ago. But today, she just snorted coldly. She extended her hand and probed Luo Nan's forehead. Her fingertips slid down, and she measured his carotid artery, heart rate, and so on. There was nothing abnormal about this, but Luo Nan's face looked awkward no matter how she looked at it. She sized him up a few times, and she finally discovered a problem. "Why are you wearing glasses?" She reached out to take them off as she spoke. Luo Nan shot a glance at her and saw her face turn stiff. Her eyes seemed to be a bit lifeless. "Is it that ugly?" Luo Nan took back his glasses and suddenly felt that something was wrong. This was because his heart lantern of the eye's orifice had subconsciously shone over a moment ago. Zhang Yingying's life sketches were more or less clear to Luo Nan that night at Frost River Reality. Now that the heart lantern naturally shone, Luo Nan was able to see through everything. Chapter 321. Bai Hong's condition was very interesting. Luo Nan's mind stirred when he saw Zhang Yingying's special body and soul structure. Before he could fully comprehend it, another person entered the corner of the sofa. A slightly panting voice rang out. "Boss Luo, your rhythm is too strange. We can't keep up with it." As he spoke, Papercut's slightly plump body sat down hard, swaying on the sofa. As for Red Fox, he didn't say a word. He just sat on the armrest of the sofa next to Papercut. His gaze swept across Luo Nan's body, going back and forth a few times as he sized him up in detail. Back at Gear, 99% of Luo Nan's mental energy was used to put out the fire. However, he knew very well that these two people, who had once been at odds with him, were the first to rush to the scene. Their attitudes were impeccable. Luo Nan also accepted this favor. He immediately nodded towards the two and took the opportunity to shift his gaze from Zhang Yingying. He temporarily set aside the matter of Bai Hong and put on his glasses. Zhang Yingying was a little confused. She wasn't too clear on what had just happened, but after hearing Papercut's words, she instinctively mocked. "You mean to say that he should wait for us to collect his corpse?" As she spoke, she tapped her wristband, telling Papercut to pay attention to the time. Papercut pointed at Zhang Yingying and then pointed back at himself. He was speechless at this sort of self-destructive evaluation. Zhang Yingying didn't have the self-awareness to self-destruct. No matter what, she had followed Luo Nan halfway through his fight with those people from headquarters. She had provided him with intelligence and information. It was better than nothing. This group of people could be considered to be quite familiar with each other, so there was no pressure in arguing with each other. She had been tense for a long time tonight. After confirming that Luo Nan was fine, it was proper for her to recuperate and relax. But on the other hand, as the only normal person, Tianxi was very uncomfortable with the sudden appearance of these people. The ring-shaped sofa was mostly closed up. There was only one entrance, forming a relatively private space. Tianxi sat at one end of the entrance. Papercut and Red Fox, who came later, sat at the other end. The distance between them was very close, but there was no communication between them, not even a glance. Tianxi's head was slightly lowered, and her legs were together and slanted. She had a dignified bearing, but half of her body was outside, just like her current situation. As time passed, as the most outstanding self-protection mechanism of human beings, forgetfulness began to play its role. The nightmarish experience gradually became blurry, and Tianxi also pulled herself out of her trance and fear state. Her mind began to work again. The 88th floor was the venue of the Pingjiang district's first-rate school fellowship party. The participants were divided into a few age groups, but their basic identities were students. Among the people who arrived at the sofa corner one after the other, Luo Nan and Shui lay aside, there was only one person who looked a bit like a student. It was the long-legged beauty who glowed with youth. As for the other three, they gave off a strong aura of society. Zhou Hu, whom he had met before, was a 40-year-old uncle. These people surrounded Luo Nan. They were incompatible with the surrounding environment, but they themselves were quite harmonious. They naturally formed a circle. When they sat down, the students who had been whispering in the corner of the sofa felt inexplicably uncomfortable. They quickly got up and left. These people were Ian San and they said, "They Xiao Yi," Xiao said. "Bai. Were these people like Luo Nan and Puppeteer? Powerful people with inconceivable abilities?" These Bai, he of Yun had Chen, Bai Mo, Tian Yang, of Hua, Tian he. Tianxi couldn't help but guess. The circle she was in contact with was far from the campus or shallow political circle she was familiar with. It was so far that she couldn't understand it. It was even more daunting. Tianxi was adjusting her thoughts when a topic suddenly fell on her. The long-legged beauty, who looked to be a few years younger than her, turned her gaze over. "This is the female lead of the first half of the story? She's really not bad. Speaking of which, you seem to have a crush on your sister." How come you've never been a virgin with a younger woman? Luo Nan rolled his eyes even though he was extremely sleepy after hearing these nonsensical words. Tianxi was quite embarrassed by Zhang Yingying's words. Her emotions stimulated her memories. She suddenly remembered that it was this voice that made Luo Nan abandon her in the very beginning. He wanted to cast aside his burden. Tianxi knew that she shouldn't get angry with these powerful people, but she was targeted time and time again. This stimulated her self-esteem from the bottom of her heart. Of course, she wouldn't use an intense method to express it. She just lowered her eyes and sat upright on the end of the sofa. She was calmer and more reserved than before. Her delicate bearing was the most obvious weakness. It was very likely to arouse the protective hearts of the opposite sex. Luo Nan remembered Tianxi mentioning coupling theory. He naturally spoke a few words to help her. Don't joke around. Senior sister Tian is a top student of our school's design institute. She'll be studying next year. It's very likely that she'll be my mother's direct junior sister. Oh, Master's aunt. You can't just be an outsider. We share blessings and misfortunes together. Zhang Yingying giggled. Her eyes contained a hidden meaning. Do you understand what I mean? I understand. Why wouldn't I understand? If you hadn't interrupted me just now, I would have already invited her away, okay? No matter what their respective attitudes were, Luo Nan and Zhang Yingying had already reached a consensus. The matter they were about to discuss was far too sensitive. Letting Tianxi stay here would do no good to either of them. Luo Nan roused his spirits and cast his gaze toward Tianxi. Senior sister Tian, you've been tossing and turning quite a bit just now. I'm sure you're tired. It's fine if you don't participate in this party. Go back and rest. His words were more of an order than a concern. Tianxi's mind went blank. She didn't know if she was relieved or regretful. She was just about to nod when the man in the red jacket, who had remained silent all this time, suddenly spoke. The secretary opened a ward at Sacred Heart Hospital. You should go there and get your body examined to avoid any sequelae. Tianxi was stupefied for a moment before she realized that he was speaking to her. She very consciously cast her gaze toward Luo Nan. She wanted to see his attitude. Luo Nan was also puzzled. He looked at Red Fox, and the corner of Red Fox's lips twitched. You can call this procedure. Zhang Yingying immediately changed her position. She sneered. If procedures were useful, then this wouldn't have happened. All right, where's Secretary He? She's the one who called the meeting. Why is she late? She should be at the hospital? Papercut was afraid that Red Fox and Zhang Yingying would quarrel again. He rushed to interrupt and asked Luo Nan, speaking of which, what did you come here for? Did you have to wait until the party ended? I was waiting for news. Luo Nan briefly mentioned the matter of the Devil Ray. I was thinking that it would be safer to have that thing by my side. I really didn't know that you were actually a rich person. Zhang Yingying's eyes went wide. She had a very surprised appearance. Of course, this was sarcasm. Papercut scratched his head as well. Nanster, I'm not saying this, but the mutants on the market have never been sold for less than 10 million. According to the market price of this Devil Ray. Before Luo Nan could finish speaking, Xie Juanping's loud voice reached everyone's ears. Nanster, are you okay? Xie Juanping and Hu Huaying hurriedly walked over. Xie Juanping saw that there were many figures in the corner of the sofa, vaguely resembling Luo Nan. Xie Juanping didn't think too much about it and simply asked. The words came out of his mouth, but he discovered that 6 or 7 pairs of eyes had cast their gazes over. All of them were unfamiliar faces. No, there was one who looked more familiar. Zhang Yingying? Yo, sheep's head. Hello. Zhang Yingying giggled as she waved her hand. She turned to express her admiration for Luo Nan for the second time. You actually let him go negotiate the price with someone. Before Luo Nan could speak, Xie Juanping exploded first. What do you mean by actually? Zhang Yingying rubbed her fingers. How much? Xie Juanping's voice immediately lowered an octave. 60. 60 million. Zhang Yingying spread her hands. Hee. Red Fox, who was sitting furthest away, withdrew his legs to make a path. He indicated for Xie Juanping and Hu Huaying to go in and sit. He even opened his mouth to evaluate. The price is quite fair. Papercut also said, the ghost-faced electric eel we caught at 8 Rocks Reef last year was more or less the same price. It was sold for 40 million. However, the devil ray can be used both in the air and in the water. The price is hard to estimate. Zhang Yingying shrugged. What are you guys discussing with such a serious face? In any case, a certain someone can't afford it. Even if he could, he wouldn't be able to raise it. That's true. Papercut turned his head to look at the devil ray swimming mightily within the central crystal pillar. This mutant had been swimming in the nearby waters ever since Luo Nan sat here. It had never left. But in this way, the shoal of fish suffered a calamity. The strength of a mutant with a strengthened body is directly proportional to its appetite. It can eat several tons of fresh meat in a day. It's very hard to provide for it. I need it. Luo Nan stared at the devil ray. His voice was low. The effectiveness of my order frame can only manifest on the mental plane. I need an external device like the devil ray to be able to have some influence on the material plane. Some. Red Fox repeated these 2 words. He didn't understand what an order frame was, but his chest felt stifled. Right now, he was the only one who had to go to the hospital for an examination besides Luo Nan. Out of everyone present, Zhang Yingying was the first person to come into contact with the concept of order frames, gears, and coupling. She had been mulling over it all this time. She seemed to understand it, but she wasn't. Now that she heard Luo Nan mention this concept, it was as if electricity had suddenly passed through her mind. A light bulb lit up. The devil ray is an exoskeleton to you? Luo Nan was stunned. He answered, you can say that. Zhang Yingying's thoughts were clear. Her thoughts spun in succession. For you, the devil ray is just a module or a plug-in. The order frame is the energy source and overall control system? How do you do it? Luo Nan was very happy to explain a few related theories, especially when Zhang Yingying's description was very reliable. He immediately said, the generation, transmission, and output of energy and information are produced by the coupling of gears. Of course, gears themselves can produce. No, what I mean is, this is your first time seeing a mutant devil ray. How do you make it work for you? How do you make it do whatever you want? Zhang Yingying stared at him with wide eyes. Is your true ability similar to that of a puppeteer, a beast tamer and so on? Or are you a mind controller? Red Fox raised his eyebrows in the sofa corner when he heard the last 3 words. Papercut grimaced in pain. Zhou Hu looked pensive. The others all had blank expressions. What's a mind controller? Chapter 322. Hearing Luo Nan use the theory of gears and order frames to explain Ouyang Chen's great work, the group of people in the corner of the sofa blinked, furrowed their brows, and scratched their heads. Their expressions were all different, but they couldn't avoid making eye contact. The atmosphere became even more bizarre. Zhang Yingying relied on the flash of inspiration just now to barely keep up with Luo Nan's train of thought. She casually tugged at a strand of hair and asked, according to what you're saying, President Ouyang is using the heaven and earth. Yes, the spatial structure as an exoskeleton to control? The explanation of formatting theory is that the self-format distorts the heaven and earth format. Perhaps the heaven and earth format can also be explained as the coupling relationship of several relatively independent gear sets. President Ouyang has changed their originally distant space-time distribution. Luo Nan suddenly froze when he spoke to this point. Several seconds passed before he spoke in a low voice. It's the space-time distribution. Through this method, the lag brought about by the space-time distribution can be reduced. Here we go again. Zhang Yingying rubbed her forehead with her hand and sighed silently. Luo Nan's state of talking to himself was very satisfying to disgust his enemies, but it was far too heartless to use it on his own people. Fortunately, this state did not persist for too long. Luo Nan raised his head and twisted his face to look her straight in the eye. His brows even furrowed. That mind controller. Is he the same as a psychic? As long as you set your mind to someone, there will be no end to the trouble? Papercut spat out with a pft. Zhang Yingying's mind spun. Oh, it really is like this. In a thousandth of an instant, she really did feel a little apologetic. Then she chuckled as she extended her elbow and placed it on Luo Nan's shoulder. Half of her body moved closer to him, and she adopted the attitude of a brother. Don't make random associations. Speaking of which, the space-time distribution of gear sets is a very interesting way of saying it. Hey, isn't this the information that the people from headquarters want to know? Is it really okay for you to say it like this? I'm not saying it because some people have terrible attitudes. Luo Nan didn't believe that the logic world was some sort of secret. Perhaps Wang's actions could barely be considered a secret, but Yuan had never warned him about this matter. The people from headquarters simply didn't have the patience to ask. Zhang Yingying pursed her lips. You make it sound so easy. I asked the boss about Wang's matter, but she didn't explain it in detail. That might be because she doesn't understand formatting theory. Luo Nan knew that the boss Zhang Yingying spoke of was the illustrious and famous Her Majesty Empress Wu. But out of a subtle thought, he still made a joke. From what I can see, the facts are quite clear. It was President Ouyang's actions that gave Wang convenience. He took the opportunity to lock onto a place that was originally very far away. He took a shortcut and jumped over. No one could truly understand his formatting theory and coupling theory, but his descriptions were logical and clear. Zhang Yingying and the others could imagine what would happen. Luo Nan didn't want to be labeled as a mind controller in his muddle-headedness. He had no concept of this title at all, so he asked, "What's the occupation of a mind controller?" It can be considered as an advanced level of hypnotist. They specialize in manipulating people's minds and are highly sought after in the various orders. The weaker ones can be in charge of preaching and preaching, the stronger ones can become the core priests, and there are a few who can directly become the leader of the order. By the way, we haven't had this lesson yet? The one who spoke wasn't in the circle of sofas. Instead, it was Bamboo Pole, who had just walked into the corner of the sofa. He was an expert in the study of secret orders. He had given Luo Nan the shorthand of the important people of the world course. The strong ones of the various major orders were a very important component. Luo Nan shook his head. He had no impression of them. He saw Yuan at this time. She was by Bamboo Pole's side, but he felt that she was a bit quiet and low-key. Luo Nan's 4 limbs were weak right now. His body's reactions were slow by half a beat. He could only wave his hand at the 2 who had arrived as a greeting. Shui Lei, who was by his side, instinctively stood up to give his seat. He was worried that Yuan and the others would be polite, so he simply jumped over the back of the sofa and went to the back. Since this was the case, Yuan thanked Shui Lei and passed through the aisle of the sofa. She and Zhang Yingying just happened to sit on Luo Nan's left and right. The sofa was soft, and the 3 sat very close to each other. It was quite crowded. As for Bamboo Pole, he didn't join in the fun. He simply walked over to the bar in the corner of the sofa and occupied one of the only 2 seats. He asked for a martini and beamed as he watched the group of people rub against each other on the circular sofa. Papercut was a bit regretful when he saw this. He also wanted to have a drink or 2. He got up and said in a loud voice, "Give me a rum and coke." Bamboo Pole shook his head. "Save a seat. Cragburst will be here in a bit. With his size, he shouldn't be tormenting you guys." Then he waved his hand at Shui Lei, who was behind the sofa. "Leister, how about a cup?" "It's not even a bit yet." Shui Lei wasn't at the age to drink alcohol, and public places were the strictest. He could only politely decline this sort of pastime. Shui Lei walked behind Xie Junping and Hu Huaying as he spoke. The topic of discussion and the strange atmosphere had stupefied the 2 rich kids. They instinctively let out a breath of relief when they saw Shui Lei come over. Xie Junping asked in a low voice, "These are all?" Shui Lei didn't know how to respond for a time. Papercut, who was sitting next to them, put on a smiling face. "We're of the same profession in the society." "Yes, we're just like your Mystic Arts Research Society. Our fields are pretty much the same." Xie Junping went, twice. It was unknown what he was thinking, but his expression was strange. On the other side, Yuan spoke in a low voice after sitting down for a few seconds. "I'm sorry, Mr. Luo. This situation has occurred because of my negligence in my work." Luo Nan didn't say anything. He wasn't angry at Yuan, but it was absolutely impossible for him to say, "It's okay," at this time. In the end, he still minded. How could he not mind? After experiencing headquarters' shameless methods, Luo Nan's mind was filled with the question of how he should respond when the next wave of enemies arrived. It wasn't just him alone. There was also his aunt and uncle, his relatives and friends living in Xia City, and even Gear, who couldn't be moved. All sorts of fetters had to be taken care of. No matter how one looked at it, it was an impossible task. Before the train of thought was clear, a person's thoughts would naturally trace back to the past. All sorts of if, maybe, if, then, and so on, along with the corresponding emotions of complaint, regret, and so on. Luo Nan didn't have the mental strength to imagine things that didn't happen, but those fuzzy emotions still existed more or less. Following He Yuan's straightforward apology, they were like bad wine that hadn't finished fermenting. They broke through the walls of the barrel and splashed out. He didn't have the leisure to ponder over his words. He spoke bluntly, "I need a solution. Me. My family. My mother's blood and sweat. That group of scum. They can do anything." He had said these words to Xue Lei. He had said them to himself. Now he was saying them to He Yuan. In the beginning, he was speaking rationally. Now, he was venting his emotions. He Yuan responded in a deep voice. "President Ouyang has already sealed off headquarters maintenance authority on the psychic wave network. Gong Qi and his group will leave Xia City tomorrow morning." Luo Nan wanted to continue listening, but the words were cut off. He turned his head to stare at her. And then, "The branch is currently researching the relevant security plan. I'm fully responsible for the specific matters. Over." The sofa corner immediately sank into an absurd silence. Luo Nan was stunned. He only spoke after a while. "That's it? What about the specific actions? Staffing? Are there any guarantees? This sort of thing." Papercut saw that the situation was far from good. He instinctively acted as a peacemaker. "Nanster, it's not that the secretary isn't doing her best. It's just that the unrestricted warfare of ability users against ordinary people is a worldwide problem. The types are ever-changing. It's impossible to prepare a contingency plan. The secretary says that she's fully responsible. She'll certainly shoulder it. Everyone will do their utmost, right?" Papercut's intentions were good, but Luo Nan's heart sank the more he listened. He absolutely didn't doubt He Yuan's sense of responsibility, but this feeling of not necessarily being effective even if they tried their best seemed to be heading toward the worst possible outcome. Luo Nan understood clearly that if he were to have the thought to kill any ordinary person in Xia City right now, he would probably need Ouyang Chen and Her Majesty Empress Wu, who he could not understand, to protect him from the side. Only then would he be able to defend himself. Aside from this, any conventional security measures would be meaningless. It would be useless even if He Yuan mobilized the army to surround the target so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. There were perhaps very few ability users who possessed methods like his, but there was no lack of powerhouses at the same level or higher. There was even the Order of Justice and Quantum Corporation. Powerhouses from various places would converge. Wouldn't the corresponding methods be ever-changing? All right, how did he end up standing on the opposite side of these powers? Luo Nan only had a vague answer in his mind. He wasn't willing to hastily come to a conclusion. He just took a deep breath, leaned his upper body forward, and rested his elbows on his knees for support. He hung his head in contemplation. No one followed up after Papercut's terrible consolation. There was another long period of silence, so long that it was suffocating. Speaking of which, there were no misunderstandings between them. But because of the enormous difference in the pressure they bore, they lost the foundation for deep communication, making it hard for this topic to continue. But there were some things that could not be avoided. Luo Nan was a member of the society, but the society was unable to give him help and protection. The upper echelons of the society even persecuted him. The difference between the branch and headquarters, or a promise or two, was not enough to fill this absurd crack. As for He Yuan, she didn't want to say much. Ever since she arrived at the society, she had always been in charge of confidential work. She tried to change the situation of the society leaking information everywhere. But strictly speaking, the leak of Luo Nan's information and headquarters actions were all her responsibility. It was also her greatest setback after retiring from the military. She had to reflect. And so the two sat shoulder to shoulder. One was ramrod straight, and the other was stooped. They both sat quietly. The others looked at each other in dismay, finding it harder and harder to open their mouths. Oh, it's only been a while, but it's getting lively. A sudden external force shattered the wall of silence in the sofa corner. A rather eye-catching group of people entered this dusky corner along with the sound. He Donglu wore a well-ironed military uniform, yet he was hugging two beauties on his left and right. He brought along two beautiful women who were just flower vases as he walked over. Behind him followed an old driver who had maintained his silence all this time. He should be a bodyguard or something. As for the other martial artist, Feng Zhejun, and his female companion, they were nowhere to be seen. He Donglu played around the venue for a bit. He quite liked the atmosphere in the sofa corner. It was just right for him to play a few games with the flower vases. But when he came back, he couldn't help but be stunned when he saw the dense mass of people. This place could indeed fit a few more people, but it seemed like it was no longer suitable to play games. TSK. What a disappointment. In order to create an atmosphere, there were practically no lighting facilities in the sofa corner. The watery blue light pouring over from the crystal pillar in the center was the brightest source of light. The first person He Donglu recognized was Shuelei, who was behind the sofa. That size very appropriately stimulated his memories. He remembered that this big guy had nearly gotten into a conflict with his follower just now. He recognized Shuelei, and his gaze shot down. He also saw Xie Junping and Hu Huaying along the way. They all knew each other. He Donglu grinned and used his chin to point in the distance. You guys also know the benefits of this place? Come. Make some space. This party is really boring. It's just that the quality of the girls is okay. His words caused the two flower vases to pout coquettishly and laugh. On the side of the ring-shaped sofa, Xie Junping and Hu Huaying glanced at each other and stood up at the same time. Xie Junping called out, "Young Master He, we just so happened to meet. This place is too crowded. Let's go somewhere else. It's here." What's a little crowded? At this time, we should squeeze a little. How could He Donglu be easily persuaded by others? Moreover, at this time, he saw Tianxi sitting upright with her eyes drooped at the entrance of the ring-shaped hair ring. Her dignified and elegant bearing was precisely the kind he admired the most. It just so happened that this side was relatively empty. He Donglu didn't care about the capacity of the ring-shaped sofa that was almost full. He hugged the two flower vases and walked inside. Naturally, he walked to Tianxi's side. He Donglu could be carefree, but the old driver behind him had to fulfill his duty. As he spoke, the latter had already keenly sensed that something was wrong. Sweeping his gaze, he also saw a familiar person first. Zhouhu. The old driver opened his mouth, wanting to speak. At this time, a cold and clear gaze shot over from the other side. The instant he made contact with the gaze, he immediately stood at attention and shut his mouth. Although He Donglu wasn't considered a proper hoodlum, he already had thoughts of hunting. As he passed through the inner aisle of the sofa, he deliberately rubbed against Tianxi's legs, which were wrapped in her long skirt. He revealed a smiling face and said, "Excuse me, beautiful." Tianxi knew from Xie Junping and Hu Huaying's reactions that this young master he had an extraordinary status. She faintly furrowed her brows, but she didn't raise her head. She just shrunk back a bit. He Donglu chuckled as he sat down. He was just about to strike up a conversation when he heard a low chuckle from the side. The sound was extremely pleasant, like the cry of a lark on a branch. It made one's heart itch to hear it. He Donglu followed the sound and raised his head. He saw a youthful and bright young woman. She laughed in an unbridled and willful manner, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. She didn't conceal them at all, practically lighting up the dusky corner. Oh my, this is good. He Donglu was at the age where he loved to play. He liked this kind of magnanimous playmaster the most. He immediately changed his target. His gaze swept over the other person's body, and he called out with a laugh, "Beautiful lady, you're dressed as a female student being kept as a mistress." Zhang Yingying had been stifled by the previous round of silence. It was hard for her to speak even if she wanted to. Naturally, she was incomparably cooperative when she saw that there was something fun to be had. She beamed as she hugged Luonan's arm and shook it. "This is our boss." You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.